Test.
All right, good evening. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for August 7th, 2021. This time I would like to call the meeting to order. The commissioners who are present for this evening's meeting are at City Hall, and I don't believe we have any on Zoom. We also have staff from the city attorney and clerk's offices, as well as the city planning department. If you're joining us on Zoom this evening, we can see you or hear. You may observe the meeting, however, your ability to be seen on screen and talk will be muted. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, you will be unmuted and then be able to comment. Please note that we cannot take questions until the public testimony portion. If you have a process question during the meeting, please email cityclerk@meridiancity.org and they will reply as quickly as possible. If you simply want to watch the meeting, we encourage you to watch this streaming on the city's YouTube channel. You can access it at meridiancity.org/live. With that, let's begin with a roll call. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Grove.
Here.
Commissioner Lorcher.
Here.
Commissioner Casanelli.
Here.
Commissioner Seal.
Here.
Absent are Commissioners Wheeler, Yearsley, and McCarville.
Okay, now we'll move on to adoption of the agenda. The first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. So we do have Pear Place subdivision. It will be open for the sole purpose of continuing the item and to a date that we have not decided on yet. Could I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Is moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried. For the consent agenda, we have two items on the consent agenda. First one is to approve the minutes of the September 16th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And the other is for finding facts, conclusions of law for Fairview Row Townhomes H 2021-0049. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, now I'll go on to explain the public hearing process. This time, that's redundant. I already said I was going to do that. We will open each item individually and begin with the staff report. Staff will report their findings on how the item adheres to our comprehensive plan and unified development code. After staff has made their presentation, the applicant will come forward to present their case and respond to staff comments. They will have 15 minutes to do so. After the applicant has finished, we will open the floor to public testimony. Each person will be called on only once during the public testimony. The clerk will call the names individually of those who have signed up on our website in advance to testify. You will then be unmuted in Zoom, or you can come to the microphones in chamber. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the commission. If you have previously sent pictures or a presentation for the meeting, it will be displayed on the screen and our clerk will run the presentation. If you have established that you are speaking on behalf of a larger group like an HOA, where others from that group will allow you to speak on their behalf and give up their time, you will have up to 10 minutes. After all those who have signed up in advance have spoken, we will invite any others who may wish to testify. If you wish to speak on the topic, you may come forward in chambers or on Zoom, press the raise hand button in the Zoom app. Or if you are only listening on a phone, please press *9 and wait for your name to be called. If you're listening on multiple devices, a computer and a phone, for example, please be sure to mute those extra devices so we do not experience feedback and we can hear you clearly. When you are finished, if the commission does not have questions for you, you will return to your seat in chambers or be muted on Zoom, and you will no longer have the ability to speak. And please remember, we will not call on you a second time. After all testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to come back and respond. When the applicant is finished responding to questions and concerns, we will close the public hearing, and the commissioners will have the opportunity to discuss and hopefully be able to make final decisions or recommendations to City Council as needed. Okay, with all that, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for items number, and there are 3 resolutions. So we'll open all 3 of them so that they can be read, and then we'll act on all 3 of them individually. And that's resolution number PZ 21-04, PZ-2105, and PZ-2106. And we'll begin with a staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll take these 3 items and I'll preface it by saying, sorry about that. I'll preface by saying this is not a public hearing in the sense we didn't notice it as a public hearing, but certainly the public as well and will invited to comment if they would like. So as you mentioned, we have 3 resolutions for the commission's consideration this evening. The first 2 resolutions both apply to the proposed urban renewal district that the Meridian Development Corporation and the City of Meridian have been working on, known as the Northern Gateway District Urban Renewal Project. So I'll talk about those in just a moment. And the third item pertains to an existing urban renewal project known as the Union District. I'll start with the first 2. As I mentioned, the Meridian Development Corporation, or MDC, and the City of Meridian have been working on this concept and this idea for many months at this point, and this item was referred to the commission by the City Council and Mayor. The item before the commission tonight is fairly narrow in scope. What was required both by the referral from the City Council and Mayor, but also by state law, is for the commission to review the proposed plan for the new district and to find that it's in conformity with the City of Meridian's comprehensive plan. You have a fairly extensive analysis in your packet that I know you've all seen in advance, prepared by the planning staff, Brian McClure and others, that do that analysis for you. And the short version this evening is the recommendation from staff, from the planning staff that did that analysis, is that that finding can be made, and that its recommendation to the commission this evening is that you pass the resolution, or in this case, resolutions plural, making that determination. The reason you have 2 resolutions before you this evening is we have sort of a unique situation. The commission may recall that some weeks ago you considered and discussed a proposed annexation. What's commonly referred to as the McFadden property. And so that's about a 17-acre parcel that's located at the intersection of Cherry and Meridian Road. That annexation is still in process, and it's the desire of both the property owner and MDC that property be included in this new urban renewal project. But there's also a possibility, and the council will be considering that in the near future, but there's also a possibility that might not happen for unexpected reasons. And so the reason you have 2 resolutions before you this evening is that we have, the first resolution is, we've described it as option A, which would include the entire proposed project area, including the McFadden property. And you have on your screen, and as well as in the chambers here, a map that shows that area that's bounded by the dashed red line. And you can see that McFadden property is up in the, I'll call it the northwest corner of the proposed project area. So this option A, the resolution known with, that's been described as option A, includes the McFadden property. But because there is a slim possibility that annexation may not be complete before this project is approved, we also have for the commission's consideration a second resolution, which we've called option B, that really is the exact same project except absent the McFadden property. And so that's the reason you have two resolutions before you this evening. The request of staff is that the commission, of course, have deliberation and receive additional information as you need, but we'd ask that you approve both resolutions so that we have, literally in this sense, option A and option B to the extent we need to do so. I'd like to mention that we have some folks on Zoom that are available as resources if you have additional questions beyond what I can answer. We have the MDC administrator, Ashley Squires, available if you have questions. Also, an attorney with the law firm Elam & Burke, Megan Conrad, who is quite an expert in this area, also available if you have questions. And then lastly, I'll mention that we have our comprehensive associate planner, Brian McClure, available as well, that did a lot of the heavy lifting on the analysis that went into your staff report and into the package you have tonight. So I think I will stop there and ask if there are questions. In fact, Mr. Chair, I might, when you get to this point, I might ask that you vote on those two resolutions, and then maybe I'll take up that third resolution as a separate item.
Okay. This is my first time dealing with a resolution, so I just want to make sure that we run this through correctly. So my idea was to go ahead and speak about all three of them.
Well,
We can open it up to public,
okay.
and then I don't know that anybody will be here to talk about it, but if there are, then they can, and then we can come back and move on with our motions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll be happy to do that. Let me go ahead and then present information regarding your third item on the agenda relative to the Meridian Development Corporation. So as I mentioned in a couple of my opening comments, the third resolution pertains to an amendment to the plan for the Union District Urban Renewal Project. This is a project that exists today, and the proposal that is before the commission is a relatively small addition to the area. And so that's again on your screen as well as on the screens here in the chambers. So the area that in question is that the existing project includes the area with a solid red line. The area proposed for annexation or inclusion is the area that includes the dashed red line. And so the proposal before the commission for consideration, again, it's a very narrow question, is whether the amended plan for the Union District is in compliance or comports with the City of Meridian's comprehensive plan. Again, you have some fairly detailed analysis in your packet and staff report that does that analysis and comes to the conclusion from a staff perspective that that finding can be made. And for that reason, we also recommend that the commission approve that third resolution that's specific to the Union District and this proposed amendment to the plan for that district.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, does the commission have any, I'm going to go a little bit out of order here. Does the commission have any questions that they would like to field at this time?
Commissioner. Chairman.
Archer, go ahead.
Since this is new to me too, as far as resolutions and creating a zoning district, why are some parcels exempt and some are included in regard to the Union District? I thought Old Town was a district.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Lorcher, great question. So this is different than a zoning district. This is known as a urban renewal project. So it's different than what you typically would deal with on most evenings of zoning areas and comprehensive plan. There's a whole complete section of state law that deals with the creation of urban renewal projects and what needs to require, what findings to be made. And so when these project areas are first created and then when they're amended, there are a number of criteria that have to be satisfied to include them. I think also we try to be sensitive, MDC, the city, and others try to be sensitive as to which property owners have an interest in being in a renewal district and which may not. And so all those factors come into play as the boundaries are drawn. But really, it's a matter of making the appropriate findings under state law as to which properties can legally be included within that project under the state's urban renewal law.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner, go ahead.
Okay, I might ask a question that I know the answer to, but with this, the reason that the properties that aren't included in this is because there's a maximum of how much property can be added into a current district. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner. So that is correct. There are limitations, particularly with respect to, there's overall limitations of how much land or property within a city can be included within urban renewal areas. And then there also are limitations relative to subsequent additions or annexations. So there are constraints. And so that too is a factor. I would defer to others in terms of how much that came into play on these particular boundaries. But that is, you are quite correct. There are limitations as to how much land within a city can be included within such a project.
Okay, anybody else?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Grove?
Just one other thing for me is just want to disclose that I do work within this item in the urban renewal district for the Union District, just to put that out there that I do work in that area.
So I'm going to do this a little bit on the fly, and we may want to have a quick conversation if you think that's necessary. But there are some limitations as to your ability or any commissioner's ability or council member's ability to participate in deliberations. If you have a financial interest, it might impact you. So I don't know the nature of your employment there or how this decision or this action tonight might impact that. But in order to be cautious, I might advise you to recuse yourself just to be careful. But you're the best person to answer that question, whether there are any pecuniary benefits to you from participating in this action. But if there's any remote possibility, my advice to you would be to recuse yourself and allow your fellow commissioners to press forward.
I stand to gain no financial gain whatsoever.
That's a great answer. And so if that's the case, and I think you're fine to participate as long as there's no financial interest that would result from your participation.
Okay. No more questions. We'll go ahead and open it to public testimony if there is any. Do we have anybody signed up for this, Madam Clerk, or?
Mr. Chair, as it was not noticed as a public hearing, we did not put out a sign-up sheet.
Okay. Would anybody in chamber like to come and speak? Okay, no, we'll go ahead and,
I was just saying, so Mr. Chairman, my recommendation, if you want to just take all, each of the three items in turn as discrete actions, I would suggest you take, seek a motion and vote on each item independently.
right, understood. Okay, since nobody's coming forward, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
So no harm, no foul, but just a reminder, it's not a public hearing, so no need to close, but we're fine and
Okay.
feel free to proceed.
Sure. Mr. Castanelli, go ahead.
It's just, I guess, procedure. So is this like a CUP or is this like a normal item? Is this recommendation from us ultimately going to council?
Apologies. Yeah, so the gist of the action is essentially that you're making a determination that we have the two districts, the two projects that are the subject of the three resolutions, but you're essentially making a determination that the districts, the Northern Gateway District and the Union District modifications, that the plan, or in the case of the Union project, that the amended plan, you're making a determination and a recommendation to the city council that I'll say a determination that the plan and revised plan are in conformity with the City of Meridian's comprehensive plan. So essentially, you're making a determination which will be transmitted to the city council, and the city council will have the final word. But basically, it's the essence of the three resolutions before you is that you are making specific determinations that will be transmitted to the city council.
And I have another question too. With the options A and B, option A is obviously the preferred option. Why not just take up the option A, and if that parcel falls through, then come back and take it up as a separate item?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Casanelli. Excellent question. The issue here is that time is somewhat of the essence. There are some timelines that are in play for the city council and the Meridian Development Corporation to approve the ultimate, in the case of Northern Gateway, to approve the project, or in the case of the Union District, to approve the plan amendment. That all needs to occur by the end of the calendar year. So there's a concern that there would not be sufficient time to proceed, for example, with option A, and then find out the annexation did not proceed and have to come back to the commission. We likely would not have sufficient time to do all that prior to the end of the calendar year, which is the timeline currently we're under.
And the way that I read it was basically they want to run those two concurrently so that if whichever one basically is going to happen, they have those in front of them as far as we're going to recommend approval or denial of both of them so that they have both of them in front, and then one of them will obviously not go forward. That's how I'm reading it. So that's our lot here. Is to essentially recommend approval or denial of all three of them. And then as all three of them progress, any one of them can be taken out or voted down as it progresses.
Particularly with respect to the Northern Gateway District, that's an excellent summation. So that's exactly what's being asked of the commission. And I'll just note, this is in your material as well, but the findings are exactly the same, whether the McFadden property is included at the end of the day or whether it's not included. The findings that are being asked of the commission still follow regardless, that assuming the commission concurs with the staff analysis and recommendation, but the analysis you have before you concludes that whether the McFadden property is ultimately included or if it's not included, the plan for the Northern Gateway District still is in conformity with the comprehensive plan. So it doesn't change the outcome under either scenario.
Understood. Does that satisfy everything? Mr. Castle? Okay. With that, I'm looking for motions. Anybody wants to take the first one?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Grove?
I move to approve to City Council Resolution number PZ 2104 as it conforms with the City of Meridian's comprehensive plan.
Oh, second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number PZ 2104. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, resolution number PZ 2105.
Chair,
Mr. Castelli.
I move to recommend approval of resolution PZ 2105 in compliance with the City of Meridian's comprehensive plan.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to recommend approval of resolution number PZ 2105. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. So take the last one.
You want to do it?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Castelli.
I move to recommend for approval resolution PZ 2106.
Second.
It's been recommended to approve resolution number PZ 2106. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right. Now we'll go ahead and move directly into Pier Place subdivision. We're going to open that one for continuance. And I think we just need to know what date.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm you did open it for that reason. Okay. See, the Paraplace subdivision is requesting continuance, or I should say they need to be continued because they did not post the site per code. Unfortunately, they only posted 2 out of the 3 signs, which is unfortunate. But the applicant is requesting the next hearing, which is October 21st. My understanding that hearing is extremely full. It's up to the commission on what date they would like to place it on, either the 21st or the next one after that is November 4th, I believe.
Madam Clerk, how many do we have for that?
Mr. Chair, for October 21st, you currently have 7 hearings. For November 4th, there are currently 4 hearings of note. November 4th is still open for noticing. So planning staff, I don't know what's coming down their pipeline, but they still have the opportunity to use that date for additional hearings coming down the pipeline. And then on November 18th, in case you want to go out that far, there's only 1 on the docket so far.
Anyone? Okay. For this one, since there's already 4 on that first meeting in November, do we want to carry it out further in November to I mean, I hate to do that to anybody, but at the same time, if it's full, it's full. I mean, 7 of them on the next one is, that's a no.
Sure, I would say the 4th would be my recommendation.
I think we could squeeze 5, but no more.
Mr. Chair, I would say that for personally, I won't be adding any more for the 4th because we're a month out. We're good.
Understood. Okay, if anybody would like to make a motion on that, I'm open for it. I don't know that we need to hear from the applicant on this, do we?
It's up to the commission's purview. I don't know if they're in attendance virtually or in person. I don't see the applicant's engineer in the audience.
Well, I was gonna say, if the applicant's here, do you want to raise your hand on Zoom or if you're in the room?
Mr. Chair, it appears Dan Lardy is online.
Okay, let's go ahead and hear from the applicant.
Dan, you should have the ability to unmute yourself.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. We apologize about not getting this site posted correctly, but November 4th, since we can't do October 21st, it sounds like it's a pretty full docket. The November 4th will be perfectly satisfactory. We appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Grove.
I move to continue file number H 2021-0056 for Paraplace subdivision to the date of November 4th.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to continue Paraplace subdivision H 2021-0056. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and move on to Burger King drive-through H 2021-0051. This was continued from the 9/16 meeting. We'll go ahead and begin with the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the project was continued for site posting issues the first time around. They posted the site correctly this time, so we are good to go. The application before you tonight is for a restaurant with a dual ordering drive-through that is within 300 feet of a financial institution drive-through that is directly to the south. That was already approved by commission in the past few months, the Mountain America Credit Union, if you remember that. So that therefore, per these specific use standards, they are required to apply for a conditional use permit. The site consists of 0.88 acres of land currently zoned CG, located at 6211 North 10 Mile, which is lot 11 of the Lost Rapids subdivision. To the north is a parking lot. To the east is 10 Mile Road, and then further to the east of that would be some single-family residential and R8 zoning. To the south is CG and the approved credit union, and then to the west is more CG with Costco. That's the Costco site there. The specific use standards require compliance with very specific standards for the proposed use of a drive-through. Staff has reviewed these standards and has deemed the project in compliance with each of these specific use standards. The proposed drive-through has 2 ordering menu boards located here and here. Each one is approximately 60 feet deep from the edge, which should accommodate approximately 3 vehicles per lane. It is, the northern drive aisle is actually wider than required. It's 30 feet wide. We only require 25. We do appreciate that extra space there for cars to turn in. In addition, the northern drive aisle is proposed as the main access because it is the main access to the drive-through. In addition, there is the shared access here, which is a shared access between the credit union site and this site. In total, the stacking length is approximately 128 feet from the edge of the drive aisle. So from here around to the pickup window, which is along the south side of the building, should allow for at least 7 vehicles to stack according to this site plan. The stacking lane does exceed 100 feet in length. Therefore, the applicant is required to provide an escape lane. As you can see, this is proposed as 24 feet wide, which does provide an escape lane here. Goes back down to the 12 feet here, because after the pickup window, you should be able to exit easily. This escape lane does meet the minimum UDC requirements. Staff is recommending a revision to the landscape plan, which is one of only 2 revisions in this area here, just to open up some of this landscaping area here so that there's a better line of sight for police and any life safety issues for the pickup window. The proposed project is 2,910 square feet, the building size. Requires a minimum of 12 parking spaces, which is rounded up from 11.6. The minimum of 1 per 250 square feet for the restaurant use. The submitted site plan shows 37 parking spaces, which is 3 times the minimum amount. In addition, this site and the Mountain America Credit Union site to the south is required to have cross access. That's been recorded. It's included. So they could have cross access, cross parking as well. CZC and design review will be required following any CUP approval. They did not submit for design review approval with this, which is fine. They can do that with the CZC. These are just some conceptual elevations that they proposed, and I will analyze those more fully at a future date should they get a CUP approval. However, glancing at it and doing a quick review with the staff report, they do appear to meet our standards. And this is my understanding of their Burger King's new corporate I guess, colors and look. But after looking at all the UDC, the comp plan, and the proposed site, staff does recommend approval of the subject CUP. There was no written testimony for or against the project. And that's it. I will stand for any questions.
Okay. At this time, would the applicant like to come forward? Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 15 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Lonnie Reed with Legend Engineering, 52 West, 100 North in Heber City, Utah. First, I'd like to thank Joe for helping us to the site posted correctly. He's been very patient and very accommodating with that, so we appreciate that. We're here to answer any questions you have. We've got the owner, architect, and contractor here, so hopefully we can answer any questions you might have about the project.
Well, usually we have what we'll do as part of process here is we'll let you do any kind of presentation that you want to do. And then we'll have, we'll take public question afterwards. I mean, at this point, are there any specific questions that the commission has of the application?
Sure.
Commissioner Casanelli?
Is there we got the site plan up. Can you just give me some perspective on how that's sitting? Where is, I was trying to find it on some other maps. Where's 10 Mile?
10 miles.
Where's
on
the main,
right side
where's
of
that
the-
one access into Costco?
It's on the right side of the 10 miles on the right side of the
Okay, oh, there it is.
drawing there, and the access is to the south of us, or to the lower down on the page.
Yes, Commissioner Casanelli, there's this lot and the Mountain America, and there's, I guess, a right in, right out access from 10 Mile. And then 1 or 2 lots south of that is the Lost Rapids, the light.
Okay. So this is just to the north side of that, of the credit union that we approved.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, at this time, we're going to take public testimony, and then we'll let you come back up and answer any questions that come out of that. Madam Chair, is there anybody signed up to testify?
Mr. Chair, there is not.
Okay, is anybody in the room or on Zoom wants to testify? If you're in Zoom, please press the raise your hand button. If you're in the room, just raise your hand. I'm not seeing anybody raise their hand on Zoom or in the room. So this time, would the applicant like to come back up? I do have one question for you, and that's, I mean, you have plenty of room for the escape lane, but in the design of a lot of these new ones, because sometimes it takes longer to get the orders ready. There's parking that happens as a result of that. You know, you're told to go ahead and go around the side of the building or anything. How will you accommodate that?
I'm gonna let Gary answer that question.
Okay,
Is it,
My name is Gary Moore. My address is 9100 South, 300 West in Sandy, Utah. I'm the Burger King operator that will be operating that Burger King there. And probably if we park cars, will be in those spaces that are right as you exit out of the drive-through. There's those spaces along that. We try not to do that. Well, that's one of the reasons for that escape lane, is being able to get a car out and around the side there. But if we do have to park cars, it would be in those spaces at the top of the drawing.
okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you very much. Okay, can I get a motion to close the public hearing for item number H 2021-0051?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for H 2021-0051. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Any other deliberations that we would like to have on that?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Casnell?
I probably should have asked the applicant, maybe we could just look for a head nod, but maybe Joe can answer, but are they in agreement on the one change on the landscaping?
Commissioner Castelli, I've actually not received formal confirmation, but they didn't tell me no, so.
I see some heads moving, so it looked like a yes. And then Joe, do you have the operating hours of particularly the drive-through?
I do not, Commissioner Castelli. I assume technically because they do not abut a residential district or use, they can go 24/7. It's not my understanding that Burger King does that. So generally speaking, it's probably going to be midnight at the latest would be my guess, probably 11 p.m.
So that leads me to a question. You've knocked down some of the landscaping there that it looks like from what I can see on a map and whatnot, we get headlights then going in directly pointing to residential across 10 Mile. Was that addressed?
Mr. Castelli, that was not directly addressed, really, because 10 Mile is 5 lanes wide now, and they have pretty mature landscaping, and those are all backyards directly to the east. So they have lush landscaping as well as a 6-foot fence all along the east boundary of 10 Mile, which is 25 feet outside of the right of way even further. So you're looking at over 120 feet probably separation between just the curb and then the other back fence. So I don't see lights being a major issue there. I do understand that under the qualm there, but it did not come up specifically just because of the distance.
Okay.
Anybody else got any questions, concerns? Okay. I will entertain a motion if anybody has one.
Sure.
Commissioner Grove.
All right. After considering all staff applicant and public testimony, I move to approve file number H 2021-0051 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of October 7th, 2021 with no modifications.
Is there a second?
Second.
And moved and seconded to recommend approval for to approve Burger King drive-through H 2021-0051. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to Elderberry Estates subdivision. It looks like this is H 2021-0044 and H 2021-0005. And we'll begin with staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. Alan Tiefenbach, Associate Planner with the City of Meridian, looking and feeling much better this evening than the last time you saw me. Okay, this is a rezoning to OT Old Town and a short plat for 4 lots. The property is about a half acre, a little bit larger, zone CC, located at 1332 North Meridian Road, which is east side of Meridian, south of East Fairview. To the north, it's all of it is right now presently zoned OT. To the north is single family and office. To the east is single family, multifamily and office. To the south is a couple of salons, and then to the west across the street is also single family and some office. The property was platted in 1920. That's the only history there, very old plat. Comprehensive plan map recommends it for Old Town. As I said, this is a request to rezone from CC to OT and a short plat for 3 lots, and I'm going to come back and revisit that. For 3 lots to allow 3 duplexes. That was what it was at the time of the staff report. And again, I'll come back and revisit that. The property, let's see here. The property is a flag lot. So the access comes from North Meridian Road, again, surrounded by office, salons, and multifamily. Oh, is it not? Is my presentation not sharing? Okay, hold on here. Get it? My apologies. I thought you were looking at this. Got it? I hope.
Got it.
Okay. So property is a flag lot. That's what you see in the darker lines. The only access that is their property comes from the southern access off of Meridian. They also have a northern access. Both of these are easements that are shared by all the property owners surrounding. The southernmost driveway to North Meridian provides access also to the parking lot down here for the salon. The northernmost access, which is up here, provides a connection shared to the lot to the west of the property, which is here. The applicant also additionally proposes to stub to here. This is all common access easements that are shared between these properties and this one. So it's not a public road. It's basically a drive aisle. Both ACHD and Fire have looked at this. They don't have any comments. One thing to mention, the only part of the sidewalk that is on this applicant's property is the north side of this southern driveway. The reason why I say that is the UDC requires a minimum width of 5 foot for sidewalks. One of the conditions of approval staff is recommending is that the applicant reconstruct this sidewalk to be 5 feet wide. There's also a requirement in our code that you can't just stripe to cross a parking lot. You actually have to use something like pavers or something like that, or decorative concrete. So that's another one of the recommendations of the staff report. In regard to the other sidewalks on the north and south side here and on the south down here, staff is just recommending that the applicant try to work with the property owners and see if they can actually widen those sidewalks as well. But again, that's an offsite improvement. The applicant really doesn't have any control over that. So it's just hoping that they can cooperate with them. There's also a Idaho Power easement, which you can see here, and that's hatched. Applicant knows that they have to relinquish that. That's one of the requirements of a condition of approval. At the time of the staff report, staff mentioned to the applicant that although the plans that were submitted met all of the parking requirements per the code, in this case, because they're 3-bedroom duplexes, 4 parking spaces each, because they met the requirements, we really didn't have any additional comment in regard to their parking. But we did mention that because all of the access was a drive aisle and a fire lane, that the issue could come up about what if they need additional parking for some kind of gathering or a football game or whatever, where are they going to park? Because there really wasn't anywhere else. About a week later, we heard back from the applicant just recently, the last couple of days, and he said he'd talked to the adjacent neighbors, and to be a better neighbor, he's going to reduce the proposal down to 3 duplexes, which is what you see here. So the most recent version of this that comes to the Planning Commission tonight, the only difference really is that the short plat is going to be 3 lots versus 4. What this would do, and this is only just to demonstrate, it gives them about 8 parking spaces per duplex. So that's twice what they're required to have. I believe the applicant does have a most recent version of a 3-lot short plat with them tonight. Again, we haven't seen it, but we don't have any comments with that. We didn't have any comments on this. And if the short plat is exactly what we saw before, but with 3 lots, really the only difference would be 1 less duplex and a little more parking. If that's the case, then we would just recommend that the most recent short plat of 3 lots be submitted and go to council. We listed some of the conditions of approval in the staff report, but other than that, I would entertain any questions.
Okay, thank you. At this time, would the applicant like to come forward?
Yeah, I got it up. If you're talking about the PowerPoint, that's what I just put up. Is that what you want, or the PDF?
Yes, well, there should be a layout of the final plat.
Okay, I saw I do have a PDF here. Oh, wait.
So anyway, we'll get that started.
Please, if you could give us your name and address for the record, and we'll let you fire away.
William Mason with Mason and Associates. Our address is 924 3rd Street South.
Yes.
We have reviewed the staff report, and with that change of going from 4 lots to 3, we think that we have a better project with the extra parking. After we started looking at the drive aisles and the fact that Meridian Road is a really busy road, we don't want people parking where they shouldn't be. That's why we reduced the lot count, reduced that unit count. So that last picture that you saw with the 3 parcels is what we would like to move forward. Again, we didn't have a chance with the time of this hearing to get all of that finalized staff, and we'd work with staff to finalize all that. We have no problems with the conditions of the staff report.
Thank you.
With that, I stand for it.
Okay, do we have any questions for the applicant or staff? I just have a quick one on the parking that was detailed there, where there's 2 spots on either side of what is traditionally the driveway there. Would both of those be paved, or what would the plan be for that?
That's correct. They would both be paved. That's the plan. So there would be the apron in front of the garage, and then alongside of that, there would be tan.
Interesting. Okay. Mr. Grove, go ahead.
I have a question. As this is currently zoned commercial and you're moving to Old Town for designation, what is the, I guess, purpose for going residential rather than maintaining a commercial designation here?
Part of it is the fact that it's set back away from Meridian Road, and we only have those flag openings that are about 25 feet wide. And there's buildings in the front of this parcel, so that there's no visibility from Meridian.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. At this time, we'll take public testimony. Madam Chair, is there anyone signed up for this one specifically?
Mr. Chair, we do not have anybody signed in.
Okay, if anybody on Zoom would like to raise their hand, or anybody in the audience wants to testify, please raise your hand. Okay. Not a lively house tonight so far, so. At this time, would the applicant like to come back forward? I do actually, just I've got a concern over the double parking spots there. I'm just thinking that is very well intended, but may have consequences, such as people trying to park trailers there, things like that. So how, I guess, is there going to be like an HOA, covenants, rental agreements where things could be written in to make sure we don't have those kind of issues there? Or is that something that you might even try to attract?
You know, my client is here tonight. He might be able to better answer whether he wants to do CCNRs to try to limit what parked in that area.
Okay, that'd be great if he wants to come up. Please name and address for the record, and then
Jonathan Long, 1859 South Topaz Avenue in Meridian.
Okay.
And so as far as the parking goes, the tandem, those are adjacent to the finished driveway, as you pointed out. And those parking spaces are going to be specific to that particular unit that they're in front of, adjacent to. They, like we said, we are going to have CCNRs. We desire to be good neighbors and have a good project for everybody around us. So there's going to be CCNRs. There's also going to be really tight places where you can have to sign knowledge. There's to be no cars on blocks. There's to be no trailers of any kind. The duplexes that we're looking at are actually more the executive style and craftsman style duplexes. So they're going to be finished down nicely. We want these duplexes to be attractive. The properties of these duplexes.
thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sir, with your development, I'm assuming you've talked with your neighbors. Do you have any idea on how this will fit in with any future plans that they are expressing, or have they expressed any indications of what they would be doing surrounding your property?
So we've talked about that as far as their future use. To my knowledge, Expression Salon that Kenny and Darlene own. There's no changes or there's no plans for changes to what they're doing in the future. The Gibbs, who owned the bookkeeping and CPA business just to the west of us, at some point, they've got a small little empty lot there, and they would be interested in developing that with commercial because there's road frontage. Speaking with them, they saw no conflict with what we were doing and what they were doing. They actually saw it as value added because they're going to have potentially future clients that are living in their backyard now. So no conflict or issues that have been brought up with present use or future use.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Castanelli, go ahead.
John, when you went down to the three units, the three duplex units, to accommodate the parking there, did you consider any kind of a, because that's come up a couple times now, any kind of a common area to park maybe on one end, but additional parking as opposed to doing it this way? That way people couldn't put trailers and things like that, and it would be, it'd be specifically designated for parking.
Sure, and we entertained that as far as trying to squish the three duplexes together and keep a 4-lot approach and pretty much just using that 4th lot for overflow parking. There's pros and cons, I don't know that it would change what people are going to try and park there versus what they would try and park on their individual lot. In the end, our desire was to try to make the project more comfortable for those residents by providing more space in between units, and then trying to keep overflow parking confined to those specific lots. So those residents on that lot parking only on that lot. And minimum requirements are 4 parking spaces, 2 of which are enclosed for a 3 to 4 bedroom unit. So we've got every one of the units has its own enclosed garage along with the finished driveway plus 2 tandems. So that puts our total number of parking at 12 per duplex now. And that's going to be sufficient. We have talked to neighbors just as far as particularly the CPA. If ever there was a need for overflow parking, would an adjacent parking lot be available after hours? They're very open to that, not to the point necessarily that we're looking at formalizing a parking easement or what have you, but working with the neighbors, we seem to have a pretty good understanding that we're going to try to do what's necessary to keep all parking on those lots. But should there be any necessity for overflow after hours?
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. At this time, can I? Yep. Go ahead and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Kelly Sass, 1414 North Meridian Road. That is the northwest plot attached to this situation. Couple of things we just wanted to note. One of the areas that was recommended for that wider sidewalk currently has access to all of the lot surroundings, not only further to the north toward Meridian Road and Fairview's intersection, but also ours and to the south. Our mailbox area is all there. There has already been with existing businesses issues with blockage of that area. That's not something we think is any way exclusively their responsibility, but any proposed reconstruction of that sidewalk, we would ask also included a fire lane or no parking marker in order to prevent future issues with that space. Additionally, when we purchased our area, we were not informed that there was a shared easement of our driveway beyond the immediate CPA office to our south. That is our only parking. Your current visuals for your plat with the 3 divisions includes our backyard. The actual visuals that you had of those spaces does not include our backyard being fenced. I don't know if that's currently in alignment with their plans or not, but that was plans made before the new platting for that rear area had been recorded. So those are some issues we had at time of purchasing with the previous ownership of the lot in question. And now we just want to make sure that those records are really clear and that plans are made very clear regarding our space and also the use of our necessary accommodations being our mailbox and the only parking we have for our lot being that shared driveway with the CPA's office directly to us.
Okay. Alex, quick question on that. So as far as the shared lane and where the mailboxes are, she's describing, that's offsite essentially for the purposes of this.
Yeah, yes, sir. The only lane that belongs to this applicant is that 14 feet, I think it is, wide little sliver here. Everything else are access easements. So basically a civil issue between applicants. Whether or not they can park in these access easements, I don't believe that the language speaks to that. I do know that these are going to be fire lanes. So I'm really not prepared to answer sort of a civil issue in regard to whether or not they can park in a private easement. Maybe the applicant can, but this here is owned by the applicant down to the south. That's really the only thing the applicant has control over as far as this case goes.
Specifically, commissioners, that south lane to which you speak, that 14-footer, that is where the mailbox is. If you'll draw your attention, it's about 15 feet set back from the front curb of Meridian Road, and it does supply 16. So that is just something to consider as it's already been an issue of existing. We had previously talked before this had started with the owners of both the CPA's office and the salon all had issues with our mail not coming in a timely fashion. It's made it impossible for me. That's our concern, not necessarily anything except that in moving that 5-foot wider area that we had heard about in the staff report, we want to make sure that if at all possible, that works in service to all of the businesses existing and the new residential spaces that everybody gets their mail.
Understood. Thank you. Anything else?
Just clarifying that north driveway, our concern is that calling it a fire lane, it is our only residential parking for both our business and our residents. So it can't be exclusively a fire lane. It's not 3 units wide. You can get parking on one end of our, but not parking. So given that we were given to assume and told in our purchase that it was shared only with the plot directly to the south, our concern is that it is zoned as a fire lane. Do we lose all access to parking? So whether that's now or later, that's something we wanted to voice today.
Alex, I'll let you try and take that one.
So I knew access was going to be an issue with this case, and I looked at the easements on this. The easements basically just talk about non-exclusive access easements. It calls, it basically identifies the property as A, B, C, and D. And the access easement says that access is to be shared between property A, B, C, and D. I don't know about what it says about parking. Again, this is not on the subject property, but the access easements, the documents do say that A, B, C, and D all have access to these easements.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Castanelli, go
I got a
ahead.
question. Which property is yours?
So looking at the currently displayed documentation, we would be the plot top and left. So they're 1414 North Meridian.
Okay. And right now you have on that property, you've got no parking on everywhere where you park is on that access
Is the
lane.
Driveway, as we were informed at time of.
Alan, can you go back to the aerial view?
Are you talking about this one?
Yes.
Yeah, so
I'm
what
gonna
you
just
see
find
here
that
is
out.
several years old. In this photo, looking at 1414 North Meridian Road, you not only see that blue tarp, temporary carport, but also the side of a two-car garage that was present and under demolition at time that we went under construction. Our current property has a 6-foot privacy fence to our property line, enclosing what is our space. We park in the alignment with that sidewalk and set in further from the sidewalk to the fence line.
The fence being on the south of your property or,
No, that would be northeast.
okay. And where is the mailbox?
Mailbox south driveway, so beyond the CPA's office, 1 lot, 2 lots, south driveway, that's where the mailbox is.
Okay.
And that is, if I am not mistaken, paving wise, a narrower access point actually than what is between our lot and the lot directly to our south.
Can you scroll that down just a little bit, Alan?
I think I see it there with the shadow.
Yeah, that shadow is the mailbox.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you very much. We'll let the applicant come back up and speak to the concerns. The applicant would like to come back up.
William Mason, Mason and Associates, 924 3rd Street South in Napa.
Thank you, sir.
So the mailbox, I actually looked at that this afternoon. Glad I did because I didn't realize that would have been her mailbox, but it looks like it's going to have to be relocated anyway because a 5-foot sidewalk in there, I don't think it's going to allow that mailbox cluster to stay right where it's at. With our project, we're going to have to get the Postal Service to agree to a location for our mailboxes. So we certainly would talk to them about potentially putting all of the mailboxes in one cluster location, or if the commercial area up front wants and the post office wants that mailbox to be separate from the residential, we can do 2. But I don't see that being an issue for us to move back. I can't tell you why parking is occurring in the access easements. Because as I see the access easements, they're for cross access and through traffic. I don't see anything about parking. And the concern that we have with that is obviously the fire department can't get back to other properties if there's people parked in those accesses. To the parking area that they are using currently, I believe that parking area is in that access easement on the east side of their property. If we could find another place for them to have parking, on their property, it looks like it would have to be up front toward Meridian Road. Doesn't look like there's much room for them to do anything there. I don't really know what to say about the parking in that area, other than that we can work with them on trying to figure out a proper location, but currently that parking that they have fenced off is actually in an access easement.
Understood. And that's, yeah, I think the concern is just they have parking that's there currently and that's going to remain because it's not. Alex, do you want to go ahead and jump in on?
So I just put this up. This is the exhibit here that you're seeing that's referred to in the cross access easement. This is the language here. It says grantor hereby blah, 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 cross access and through access easements as depicted on the site plan of parcels A, B, C, and D. And here's parcels A, B, C, and D. So it says you're allowed to have access, but there's nothing here that says parking. Again, I don't want to get all caught up in the civil issues, but these are access easements. These aren't parking spaces.
Who owns the roads? Is it ACHD or is it the city or are they private?
Are we talking about these? These are private easements
Okay.
that are on the property for the purpose of access.
Okay. Any questions as to on all of this?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Grove?
with the access that you have as part of your property, is that to be marked no parking? Is that something that I saw?
Commissioner, that is correct. All of our access roadways will be, driveways will be fire lanes. So our parking will be outside of that easement on the individual parking spaces that we're showing.
And will it be marked that way though? In terms of,
No parking, yes.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? No,
I
okay.
had a question for Alan. Can you, on this that you have up right now, if I'm looking at the presentation, all the gray is the easement,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Correct. There's two separate easements. This is one exhibit. The second easement exhibit is for this portion here. I don't have that on the screen right now.
And I don't know if you are you able to zoom in on this?
Sure. What do you want to see?
That top, I want to see the easement in relation to the property line on that, on 1414.
That work for you?
Yeah. So that easement there, and that's all to be labeled no parking where it's 24 feet.
24 feet wide. My understanding per Joe Bongiorno, those are supposed to be no parking fire lane.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Larcher, go ahead.
So in regard to this fire lane or easement, there's currently parking there now for 1414.
Was that directed to me, Commissioner?
Sure.
I guess I would defer to 1414. It sounds like they're parking there. This is the easement. What you see here are gray is what they're allowed to access on, and I don't think it's meant for parking. Whether or not they're parking outside of here is on their property is purely their concern, but this is an access easement. This isn't a parking easement.
Okay, so going forward, 1414 would have no access for parking on this lane, correct?
They're not supposed to be parking in this access easement
Now or
now or ever. Whether they are is a whole nother story. And again, if they have room back here, I don't know what they've got here. If they've got room back here, they can still park here. It's their property.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, since we're still in the public hearing portion of it, I'm going to have you come back up because you didn't use your 3 minutes and I'm interested to see what we're going to do here. So for explanation purposes, right now, it looks like you have parking on what is considered your property. Is that correct?
As per what we were told in documentation we were provided at time of purchase of this property 14 months ago, we park to the south side of our property, not the east. To the east border of our property is a 6-foot existing fence, which was approved for purchase at the time that we were under contract. The build was done by the previous ownership, who, to my understanding, was the one who approved this replotting after we had closed. What we were told is that we had an easement of access shared to the south of our property to the plot directly to the south. So 1402 and 1414 shared access of the middle third of that driveway with parking available to each of us in that space. We were told the only use for that to the east after time of contract, we were told that we might be required to expressly allow for emergency access for a turnaround of a fire truck, which is permissible and spaced accordingly with our existing parking to the south side of our property. We are not parking to the east. There is a fence on our property line.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification. Anybody other questions?
Mr. Chairman, is this a business or a residential house?
We live and operate 2 businesses out of that.
And do you have visitors to the business?
Do.
So that's typically where they park.
Minimal numbers, yes, 1 to 2 a day for less than an hour apiece. Yes, they park to the south.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming back up.
Sure.
Mr. Castanel?
Ellen, and that 24 feet, is that allowable to have parking on one side? Is there space on that? Bill's shaking his head no.
I see a 24, so what we're looking at here is a 24-foot wide easement, and all it says here is purpose of ingress, egress, a cross access and through access easement. That's what all of these properties here are allowed to access this. It doesn't say anything about parking. If they figure out, if they want to work out an issue if they want to work something out with their neighbors, that's fine. If they want to park on their property, that's fine. But per the legal agreement, I'm going to have our city attorney stop me. These are only allowed to be used for ingress and egress, not for parking.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'm reluctant to provide legal advice to the owners of 1414 or to others here this evening. But I think what Alan described to the commission is accurate. I'm seeing this document for the first time. The intent of the easement is to provide access, ingress and egress, and it's for 24 feet of width. So my interpretation of the language, looking at for the first time this evening, and just providing advice to you, not to others. I think Alan's description is accurate, and the intent of the easement is provide access.
Understood, and thank you for that. Okay, are there any other questions at this time? Okay, if not, can I get a motion to close the public hearing? Yeah, yes, you may. Please state your name and address for the record.
Scott Smith, 1321 North Main Street, Meridian, Idaho, 642. So the question I got is a couple things, a question and then a comment. How close on that back fence will the properties be, the 3 duplexes? And the comment I would make is that this is a very clustered little property down there. I went and looked at it today. So my suggestion is it's a half a mile from where we're sitting right now. It wouldn't be that big of a deal for everybody to take a look at it before you make your decisions. Because some of the points that are brought up here tonight are very valid, and you got lots of people coming and going in one driveway. And then when you got these duplexes there to boot, it's gonna, for the businesses that are on Meridian Road, the salon, the CPA, and then the 14 North Meridian Road, North Meridian, it's gonna leave a lot of congestion there. So my question is, one, can you guys go take a look at it before you make the decision and then make the proper decision? And then two, how close to that back fence line on that east border is property? As far as what will be made, as far as fence line to separate the properties behind. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll call one more time. If anybody would like to come up and testify, or anybody online, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, if the applicant would like to return one last time to address that last question, that would be great.
William Mason with Mason and Associates, 924 3rd Street South in Nampa. So this property is kind of unique because there's a 15-foot meridian sewer easement on the east side. So our fencing would be on our east boundary, but the buildings could be no closer than 15 feet from that boundary in order to stay out of the sewer easement. But you can see from this detail that we're not planning on building right up against that 15-foot easement. So I'd say there's another 8 or 9 feet behind the houses to the easement. So you're looking at 22, 23 feet from the property line to the back of the house, roughly. But our fence line would be actually on the property.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, can I get a motion to, thank you, sir, appreciate it. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing for item number H 2021-0044 and H 2021-0005?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing on H 2021-0044 and H 2021-0005. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Sure.
Mr. Casanelli, go ahead.
Well, infills are always tricky.
Absolutely.
I, when I was reading this ahead of time, I thought this was going to be fairly simple and straightforward. I don't want to sound cold and not caring about the owner in 1414, because I do. But that issue of the parking and access to that is it's kind of something that they weren't informed properly by the seller of that property, it sounds like. I mean, we've got to follow the easements for access here. And I think even if they opened it up, even if we could put parking there, which we can't, but if you could put parking on one side, nothing's to say that that parking won't be eaten up by visitors and residents of these, because it would be, it'd be perceived as public parking. So it'd be a huge issue there. I don't know, unless the applicant and the owner of that property can get together and if we can maybe condition that they get together before, before things go to council to try and come up with a solution that serves all. I don't know. I think our hands are kind of tied as far as what we can do on the parking issue. Other than that, I think it fits. I haven't seen any, other than that one elevation of the garages, haven't seen any other elevations here. I would have liked to have, but I mean, it meets we're meeting the requirements in there. I think it's difficult to try and put businesses in there just because of access and visibility. You could probably go with some sort of offices because you don't need like retail would need the visibility, but office space may not. But I'm inclined to move forward on this. It's my thoughts.
Sure. Commissioner Grove, go ahead.
As far as as far as parking for the development itself, there's more than ample parking for the number of units that are going in there. especially with the rezone to Old Town where the parking requirements are a lot tighter, just in general. And as far as like setbacks, they're a lot closer than any other zoning. So I'm not worried about any of those issues. The problem that I have with this, and this is not on the applicant per se, but is I feel like we're giving up a piece of development area that could be looked at a lot more strategically from a broader perspective. And I'm hesitant to give up the commercial zoning on this to add in the residential. Just seeing as how the development that is starting in the core of downtown is going to be spreading outward towards that northern gateway that we were talking about earlier tonight. I'm very hesitant to add something new to this space, especially as it is an empty lot. And I know that the development of this would require other properties or other coordination, but I'm not in favor of giving up that commercial zoning to move to Old Town to have this put in right now. I think that for me, it's premature from a long-term perspective for us as a community development. I think for the owner, this makes sense, but for me, it doesn't, looking at this from a longer standpoint.
Commissioner Lorcher, you have any thoughts?
Well, Commissioner Grove just added a whole new level of.
You wanna-
Grove added a whole new level of thought process on this. I mean, it, like Mr. Casanelli said, it's really hard to fit something in between other things. You've got old retail in front of it and then trying to put in new residential behind it. Whereas Commissioner Grove said, maybe in a few years from now, the old commercial would change, that would be a bigger parcel for a different kind of business. What are we voting on today? Whether or not to be changed from commercial to residential or the whole project?
It's it's gonna rezone from CC to Old Town, short plat for the 3 lots to allow the duplexes. So essentially, it's the rezone is the major portion of it.
Rezone is our task.
Correct.
This really is my first kind of big infill project, so I don't really know our history. I mean, I've seen projects like around 3rd Street where there was residential and then there's a long driveway and there was 4 or 5 duplexes behind there. It seemed kind of a strange place to put them in other parts of the city. This is a very busy road, Meridian Road is. So I guess I'm on the fence of the whole thing. I mean, it would be up to the developer if they can sell the product to residential, knowing that there's commercial in front of it. You're right, butting up against Main Street where you have other commercial. You're going to hear the bangs of the garbage trucks at early in the morning. You know, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence on this one.
Commissioner Grove, you have something else?
I'll jump in. I mean, I live across the street from this, so I'm very familiar with this area. I walk this all the time. I just have a hard time. I like infill. I like that it's tricky. I like all the nuance that goes into it. Normally, I would be in favor of this, but having this in between Main Street and Meridian Road, I think that we have a lot of potential here, and I feel like by doing this that is available to us right now, that we're going to have a harder time doing anything around this in the future. I know nobody is necessarily, coming forward and wanting to do the redevelopment of the parcels that are directly close to this, but I think that we are not looking at the longer view on this. And I would prefer a pause, just in general, to get a better sense of what else is possible here that is a little more ambitious with what is possible in downtown.
And I'll throw in here a little bit, but for clarification, first, if there is a recommendation for approval, the layout that you see right here actually is not the layout that's in the staff report. So you would have to amend to want to move forward with the 3 duplex layout, not the one that was originally in the staff report. So just so everybody's aware of that, if you do move to approve, because I can't make motions. The one advantage to sitting in this seat. And I agree I agree on all fronts. Infill's tricky. It's really tough. I'm glad to see the applicant has taken great strides in doing what they needed to do in order to fit this in here appropriately. Still a little concerned. I mean, it's interesting because there's turmoil over the parking piece of it, and there's more than ample parking being provided, within the duplexes in there. So, as to whether or not this can develop in the future, I kind of look at things as far as how they fit for what's in there right now. I am a little concerned. I'm concerned about the parking overall in this situation where things will be marked as no parking, where folks have obviously been parking, whether that's legal or not. I guess it's better to beg forgiveness than ask permission. So, and I agree with Commissioner Castanelli, that was probably not handed over correctly as far as the expectation of being able to park in that lane. So this is a tough one. I mean, if this were developed commercially, I think it would serve the city better. That said, if we decided not to do this tonight and it doesn't develop as anything else, then we've missed that opportunity as well to provide some infill. This seems to fit pretty well. I mean, there are some constraints, but that's every infill property that we have. I've seen some stuff come in for infill that didn't go through, and now we have empty spaces sitting there that are getting harder and harder to fill. Luckily, this isn't a hard corner. So I have mixed feelings about it all around for sure. That said, I think it's just looking at the layout that they have here. Again, I think it's a good layout. I think it does fit appropriately within the spaces provided. So it's tough for infill to do that well. And I think this one does. But again, there are some concerns about it. Commissioner Grove, go ahead.
I don't disagree. I think the product fits the layout. I just have concerns with the product in its location.
Understood. Okay, at some point, somebody's got to make this into a motion. And it's okay if whatever your recommendation is, we have to vote on it. So that's the good thing about it. We're not all going to agree every time. Or should we?
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'd give you
Absolutely.
a third option. I'm just surmising from comments that we may have a 2-2 vote. I don't want to predict that, but that's a possibility. So another option, the commission could vote to continue this item and wait to have, more commissioners present. That's a possibility as well. I'll just put that out there as a potential.
And I appreciate that. That's something that I was thinking about, give them time to go back and take a look at things, work with neighbors, try and figure some things out for parking. How the mailbox situation is really going to lay out. Sounds like there's some work to do on that. And the layout that you see in front of you right now was not the layout that was in the staff report. So it would provide some opportunity. for those things to happen. That said, it's going to delay things. I would say at least a month at this point in time. But again, I don't get to make the motions, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
I like the idea from legal to get some more input than just the four of us.
Okay. If you'd like to make a motion on that.
If I can interject just real quickly, if the commission does go that direction, you may or may not wish to, but I would also likely recommend that you reopen the public hearing and continue that so you can receive additional feedback at your next meeting as well.
Understood. Thank you. So if we're going to continue it, we do have to reopen the public hearing. Glad that was stated because that is something that we need to do.
Mr. Chair, we
Commissioner Rupp?
open it up. We need to be very specific on what we're opening it up for and why we're continuing it. So,
okay,
just whoever makes that motion. I'm not making that motion.
Commissioner Casanelli?
Well, right now I'll make a motion to reopen the public hearing to consider a date and to consider, I mean, we're just making a motion to open the public hearing right now, but to talk about, to address this to get more resolution on going from the 4 to the 3 and also communication with the neighbors at 1414 Meridian Road. That's my motion.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay, it is a motion to reopen the public hearing for Elderberry Estates, H 2021-0044 and H 2021-005. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Would the applicant like to come forward? Since we reopened it for continuance, I'd like a little bit of input from you. I mean, there's obviously some concerns, a little cleanup that can be done. Are those things that you're willing to consider and follow through on?
William Mason and Associates, 924 3rd Street South. I think the parking issue is something that from a fire standpoint, we're not going to be able to not post the accesses as not as parking stalls. The fire department is going to require a 25-foot open area or 20-foot open area for them to pass through. So right now that parking in that 24-foot drive aisle on the north side of the project out to Meridian Road wouldn't meet fire department standards right now for emergency services to get past. So I don't really think there's anything we can do for parking in that area. The post office, certainly we can work with the post office to determine where they want the mailbox clusters to be located. We would do
Okay, and then essentially when you come back, you'll have the formal submittal for the property is going to be the layout that we see on the screen here, correct?
correct.
Okay. Would somebody like to get a motion? Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
You want to talk about a date right now?
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we want to get a date for this? The 4th was the last one that.
Yeah,
the opening
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, certainly want to add a little bit of context to this conversation, so you can't have a narrow focus on your continuance request. So I think the applicant, from what I'm hearing tonight too, I kind of concur with legal. There's several issues that need to get addressed tonight. One is I would even encourage the applicant not only work with these owners, but also the CPA owners. Because if you look at this graphic that's before you, there may be an opportunity to provide some parallel parking on the south side of their lot. This 24-foot wide access easement is actually wider in that particular area in front of those two duplexes there. So there may be an opportunity to still meet the fire code and provide some parking, but that's going to require a shared parking agreement and bring other property owners into the discussion. So I think we can solve some of that. I think we can solve the mailbox location because our code requires the applicant to work with the post office and give us a letter and determine where to place those mailboxes. That's part of their short plat approval. So I think that works well. The other thing, so I think we can solve some of that. So if in your motion, that's what I would encourage them to do is we'd want it to obviously go to November because we know the 21st is going to be a busy hearing. So I would recommend that at least we go to November 4th to allow us to look at those revisions, possibly update the staff report if required. The other option is if 20, our code's going to require 25 feet. That's what a typical drive aisle is when you're adjacent to parking. In this particular case, the parking is the parking pads of the unit. The applicant could also go through the alternative compliance with staff and try to shrink that, not going below the fire department's requirement, but try to gain some additional width there to provide that parking. So I think you allowing us to have that month to not only work with the applicant on coming up with some sort of shared parking in the area, providing some mailbox locations that all parties can agree to, and then also seeing if we can work on this access issue and try to determine where, because as I look at this graphic, it looks like a portion of this driveway is actually going in their backyard because of that easement. And it sounds like that's something they don't want. So is there an opportunity to look at that or maybe push some of these units back and correct some of the wrongs that have been done under the previous approvals? Back in 2007, when this was approved for assisted living and the property was under one ownership. And now that you see what's happened over time when you consolidate property, but you don't develop it, and then that person goes ahead and sells each individual piece off. And then the city and we're here at the hearing talking about what previous owners committed to doing. And now we can't solve that problem unless we get people to the table. So I think the appropriate step, in my opinion, would be to continue this out like you are, and then give us some time to work on this, and then see what your recommendation is at that point. But you're right, your purview tonight is really just the rezone. Council will be taking action on that short plot.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. So really, we want to narrow this down to essentially parking issues and the mailbox relocation. As far as the continuance. So with that, and it looks like the 4th would be the date that we want to shoot for with it. So, Mr. Castanelli.
I'm going to move to continue file numbers H 2021-0044 and 0005 to the hearing date of November 4th, 2021, and have the applicants work with both the neighbors there at 1414 and CPA to the south, and with staff to try and come up with a parking solution there that's going to work, especially for the existing property owners. Return on the 4th with the three plats, and then also work on the mailbox configuration.
Second.
Hey, it's been moved and seconded to continue items number H 2021-0044 and H 2021-0005 with the modifications list or spoken. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion continued. All right, it's coming up on 8 o'clock. Would anybody like to take a quick bio break, or do we want to go ahead and drive through the next one? Okay. All right, next one up is Intermountain Wood Products Expansion, H 2021-0042, and we will start with the staff report.
Commission, Alan Tiefenbach, Associate Planner. It's a little complicated, so I'm going to try to run through all this piece by piece. This is a proposal for an annexation of 3 acres with the IL zoning district, a modification to an existing DA to create a new DA, and 2 future land use map amendments. So the property is the subject property is actually 6 different properties. These are located near the East Franklin Road, South Locust Grove intersection. 2 of these properties, which are here, are already zoned IL. 2 properties over here are currently R1, which you can see here in the county. And then there's 2 more properties to the south here that are zoned CC. And it's important to mention, I'm gonna say this a few times, that these properties zoned CC are only part of this application in regard to the comp plan amendment. They're not part of this development, and they're actually not owned by this applicant. So the 3 lots, I'm gonna run on to the next. The 3 lots containing an existing business, which is here, Intermountain Wood Products, like a wood manufacturing and distribution type company. These were annexed in 1996 and platted under what was called the Meadamont Subdivision number 2. There was a conditional use that was approved for this wholesaling business materials. And in 2001, there was a CZC that was approved. The 2 parcels to be proposed to be annexed, which are here, again, are these would be to allow for expansion of this existing business. And again, these are presently unplatted. So what you see here is to show the existing business, the properties that are going to be annexed, and this is showing what the plan recommendations are. And I'll talk more about that. This is the proposed concept plan. I'm going to run through the summary of the request again, because it's a little complicated. So the first thing is to annex the 2 properties into the city with the IL zoning to construct a 59,300 square foot warehouse. That's what you see here. And that again would be these properties here. The second proposal would be to remove a DA requirement that requires a 20-foot wide landscape planting strip along the east boundary. And I'll talk more about that later and kind of show you that. And then there's 3 future land use map amendments. The first one would be 2 future land use map amendments. The first one would be to change the designation here from mixed use community to IL. All of this is also recommended as IL, and I'll go through that. The second amendment would be to redesignate these right now, which are designated for mixed use commercial, mixed use community to commercial. So this is a demonstration of what the DA requirement for the landscape buffer is. If you see this long sliver of land here, when this property was platted under the Meadamont subdivision, the extent of the subdivision is basically to the east here. And when this subdivision was approved, there was a DA requirement that said that there needed to be a landscape buffer to the east. And the reason why is that at one time, all of this was residential. If you look at the map here, that landscape buffer basically runs right through the middle here where they have their parking. So in order for them to be able to do the development they want to do here, they'd have to remove that landscape buffer requirement. Let me run through this. Okay, so I'm going to talk first about the land use, then I'll talk about the buffer, and then I'll talk about the land use first, the DA mod, and then I'll talk about the future land use map designation. Okay, so again, this area is presently designated for mixed use commercial under the future land use map. It's to the east of the subject property across Locust Grove. Here is single family attached and detached, which is the Bellabrook subdivision. And there's also a religious institution, which is here. There are commercial and office uses to the south. Actually, right here is what was known as the Learning Tree Daycare. I'm not sure if they're still in business. And directly adjacent to the west is a large industrial park, including the applicant's development, which is here. Adjacent to the north here is 2 existing single-family residences. This strange L-shaped property right now is entitled R40 for 90 multifamily units, although probably not at this point are going to happen with that many. And the reason why is since that time, this has now become an ACH drainage pond. So nothing's happening there other than drainage. Given the existing development in this vicinity as it is now, the size of the remaining undeveloped parcels, and that the UDC requires circulation to occur from a local street and not directly from an arterial if there's an option to take access from a local street. Staff does not believe these have the accessibility and are viable for the integrated, walkable, synergistic development that's anticipated by the plan for mixed-use community. Again, we're only talking about these properties here and this one that's already zoned this one here that's already zoned R40, which now that they have R4 zoning R40, I'd be surprised if anybody would ask to go back from something that would allow multifamily. Staff does believe a plan amendment is appropriate to allow a change to the industrial designation for the subject properties. And a little bit about the one to the south, well, I'll come back to that. We do have reservations though, and I'll say this about how this proposed development would interface with these rest of these lots. These are two existing residential lots. These are recommended for mixed use community. These would be basically the last remaining lots that are right now in the county and recommended for mixed use community. So we don't know, we are a little concerned about how this would impact that. That said, we still do think that what they're proposing to do makes sense. Okay, here's the DA modification. Again, the existing business is within the Miedemont DA, or the whole subdivision is basically over here. The DA requires a permanent 20-foot wide landscape planting strip. That's what you see in this long thing here. This was required to provide a screen for what was these adjacent properties over here. This proposal would create a new development agreement. So it would come out of the Miedemont development agreement. It would create a new development agreement for some new requirements, which I've listed as conditions of approval. But what is driving this is to remove that requirement for this landscape screen so that they can build across it. At one point, this buffer was in a common lot and it was owned by the Stonebridge Owners Association. In February of 2021, the portions of this common lot, basically starting from this property line down to this property line, were sold off and deeded to this applicant. However, this was done improperly. There wasn't really a subdivision plat to legitimize this. It was just done. Also, when staff went out on a site visit for the pre-app, there were pretty thick trees there along the whole buffer. All of the trees adjacent to this lot were removed, sitting basically in the middle of the lot. Staff requested, because this was a DA requirement, these trees in this location, staff requested that the applicant account for all the trees that had been removed. And the applicant responded that 11 trees had been removed with a total caliper of about 169 inches. And as I mentioned in the conditions of approval, one of our requirements is because these trees were required and were removed, we're recommending that in addition to the required landscaping that has to happen per the code, that there would be an additional 169 inches of trees somewhere planted on this site to make up for what was removed. The last thing I want to talk about real quickly is the land use map amendments. Again, one of the things that the applicant is proposing to do is to go from mixed use community, which is here, to industrial, which is here. There are two more little pieces of property here, and this is the Learning Tree Daycare, which I'm not sure is still in business. Our concern was that if these were redesignated to industrial, we'd have this little island here of these two residential parcels of mixed use community, which really didn't make sense. We suggested the applicant work with the adjacent property owner and see if they would be amenable to having them designated to commercial, because all the properties to the south are commercial. So it would make more sense to have this designated commercial if the planning commission were inclined to go this way than to have a little island of mixed use community here. Does that make sense? Other than that, those two bottom parcels have no part to do with this development other than just to clean up the land use map. Okay, in the staff report, staff noted that although we supported the use, we said, yeah, we overall support what they want to do here, this warehouse. And we overall support the changing of the designations of the comp plan. We had issues with the site plan. What you see on the left was the site plan that you saw in the staff report. What you see on the right is the concept plan that we got today. So the issues that we had in the staff report were access. There was direct access occurring to South Locust Grove. Our code says that when there's access off of an arterial, and there's also the possibility of having access off of a lesser street, whether it's a collector or a local, that the property should be designed to take access off of that lesser street and not off of an arterial. The other thing is that we have a code that says that especially when you're on an arterial, you're supposed to provide cross access to all properties, meaning they were supposed to provide access to the north and the south. So that was our first issue, was the access issues, taking direct access off of South Locust Grove, especially for the big trucks that you would see. And secondly, that there wasn't cross access provided to the north and the south. The other issue was a pretty small issue that could be fixed, is this residential buffer wasn't wide enough. This loading bay here, there's a requirement that the loading bays have to be at least 300 feet from residential properties, which is here, which it's not here. All of the parking right now in this particular plan, the one you saw, all of the parking is located between the building and the street. And our code says that when a property is more than 2 acres, no more than 50% of the parking can be in the front of the building and the street. It's basically to try to keep from having a sea of parking as you're driving down the road. And then the last thing was that we weren't sure that the building met the modulation requirements. With our elevations, you have to have walls that inset or outset. Looking at the elevations and looking at the site plan, we weren't super clear on that. So our recommendation to you in the staff report was that although we recommended approval on the overall idea, we wanted to make clear that we did not support the concept plan as it was. Since that time, meaning today, there is a new concept plan that has been submitted. All of staff's issues have been resolved, except they're still taking access from South Locust Grove, and this particular cross access has not been provided. If you look, all of the parking has now been distributed here. They have moved the the loading bay down here. You can see how the building demonstrates that they have modulation. One thing they are missing is there's supposed to be a 5-foot perimeter drive aisle buffer here, easy enough for them to fix. Other than that, staff would support this concept plan as it is. And I'll talk about this when we get to the conditions of approval, but where we're at with this is that we would support this concept plan, but the planning commission should make a recommendation. The council has the ability to waive this requirement to close this access. And they also have the ability to waive whether or not they have to provide the cross access to the north. We look to the planning commission to make a recommendation about whether they think this access should be closed and whether access to the north would be provided. I've included that in my updated recommendation. I'll read that when I finish because I know there's a lot to remember here. The last thing is the architecture. The first version that we saw at the pre-app was a large metal corrugated building, and we said, no way. The next version that we saw is what you saw on the top, and we think it got closer, but it still doesn't meet a lot of the architectural standards manual. It didn't look like it modulated. There wasn't a band of materials at the bottom. There wasn't more than one field material. And particularly what we were concerned about is that we have a requirement that you can't have a lot of metal paneling on the building. If you have metal as a predominant material, you have to have at least 2 other field materials. So it wasn't meaning that. I don't want to get all caught on the weeds on that, but basically we said we have an issue with these elevations. We recommend, again, the use, the comp plan change, the modification to the DA, but we want to be clear, we don't support these elevations. And then today we got the one on the bottom, which we think is much better. It's a big improvement over what we've seen. We're still not sure. We haven't seen all of the elevations and had time to assess them because we just saw this today. We think this is significantly better. Our recommendation with that, and again, I'll talk about it in a second here, is just that we continue to work with the applicant on the elevations. Really, most of the time, what you're going to see and what the council is going to see is going to be very conceptual elevations anyway, because this is stuff that we work out at the time of the certificate of zoning compliance. But we had enough issues with the first elevations that we wanted to make it very clear that we were not supporting those. So here's staff recommendations. Staff recommends that the PC recommend approval of the annexation, the zoning to IL, the DA modification to remove this property from the Meadamont development agreement and having a new development agreement with the conditions that we listed, in addition to removing that requirement for the buffer. And that we recommend approval on the changes, which would be to the future land use map designations, which would be all of it mixed use community going to in light industrial, or sorry, industrial for the subject property and commercial to the two properties to the south. And the two changes that we're making to the recommendation that you got in the staff report is that we're recommending approval of the site plan with the changes that the PC should discuss whether primary access should be allowed at South Locust Grove, and that the PC should discuss whether cross access should occur to the north. And again, in regard to the elevations, we think they've made huge strides. So we think we can work it out with them in regard to the way the elevations will work. With that, that concludes my presentation, and I'll answer any questions.
Okay, at this point, we'd like to ask the applicant to come forward.
Yep.
For the record, Kent Brown, 3161 East Springwood. I actually live less than a mile from this site. I drive by it all the time. Like Commissioner Grove, I guess, might be the other site that we just recently talked about.
That's it. Is that it there, Kent? That's what you need, right?
How do you make this?
You should be able to control. There's a little plus right there. There you go. You were just on it.
Channel. So when the industrial subdivision was done, and those single family houses sitting on acreage were there, Locust Grove didn't go through. It just went up another half a mile and dead ended. And there was no connections to go any further. It tied into another rural subdivision that is on the east side of Locust Grove. And so it was pretty rural. And from the record, when that went in, there, obviously the neighbors showed up and said, hey, they're going to be doing a big industrial use over here. And we're concerned. And so they asked for that buffer to be there. The conditions of approval in the DA say that they're to buffer along their easterly boundary where there's residential. So technically, we wouldn't have to do a DA, because if we become industrial, then we're not. And we propose that we would like to be under a development agreement so that you can make sure that we're doing everything correctly on the entire site. You had a development agreement that really didn't do anything else to the existing uses. Intermountain Woods is a wholesaler that they sell flooring and stuff to wholesale contractors that are doing installations. It's not private. All of the interaction with the customers is off of Adkins. At the existing, it will remain that way. This facility is just to provide them with more storage. There will be employees that will be assigned to that building, and there will be some paperwork and so forth. Recently, doing the Amazon building and a few other things here in Meridian, things are becoming more automated, so they might have less and less employees. I think Commissioner Casnell was the only one that was here when we did subdivision to the south, which is the two parcels that we're talking about changing the comp plan designation on. That site plan shows landscaping in the front, 25 feet. Then it has a drive aisle and parking and a flex space building that will have 3 units facing the street. And then on the back side, they'll have garage doors. That plat, I'll show you in just a minute. It's here. And then there is a daycare. It's still located there. But when that daycare goes away, then there'll be a flex building back there. Because when that was approved, they were required to have a landscape buffer along their boundary to the residential. And so they haven't installed it yet, but they have a requirement for that. The property to the south also has a cross-access easement with this piece of property and kind of comes in the middle of the site. I'm sure we can work with the owner and maybe move it a little closer to the front, but we could even, I'm sure, work with them in the middle. I know that Mr. Belleville that owns that property probably doesn't really care where the cross access is. As you look at this property and the properties to the north of us, blow it up, the concern about our cross access with our neighbor to the north. We have one of those deeded ones like the last one that you saw with our neighbor. There you go, Alan. Yes. So Ann Weatherall owns the little tiny sliver, the little strip that you can see there. Yes, Alan. And that's a cross-access easement between these two properties. The reason I picked this drawing is that it shows the existing house that's on the industrial site here, and then her house that's to the north. Currently, there's a dirt driveway that kind of aligns with the LDS church that is to the east on the other side. That dirt driveway goes back and then went to both houses. We've removed all the buildings on this site. Prior to removing the bushes, the trees, we removed the houses, so they're gone. We do have that cross access that is an existing agreement, but we can also provide one at a location and kind of work that out with staff as to where we put it. We're not opposed to putting it, and I understand the purpose of it is that you're going to have limited access points. And ACHD, we tried to move it further north where we have our cross access with our neighbor. And ACHD said, no, you needed to move it in alignment with Kalispell, which is that neighborhood. Ella Brook. So the Kalispell. So our entrance lines up with that, and that's what ACHD had asked us to do. Those existing improvements were there. We've tried to address the concerns. We got the staff report sometime Monday from planning, and when we became aware of the concern about where the loading dock was, the architect got busy and tried to address those concerns, and that's why we have a new site plan at this late hour. They've been in this site for since, as Alan kind of alluded to, they did their zoning certificate back in 2001. So 20 years they've been in the site. They've become very successful, and subcontractors like to use them, and they're very busy. Intermountain Woods has a number of sites. This is the only one in the Treasure Valley. They have one in Idaho Falls, and they have many others scattered about, but this is the one that they have here. If you look from my vicinity map, make that go. Where the Murdoch sub is, that's existing commercial zoning and commercial in the comp plan. On the south side of Water Tower in that location is where the police station is located at. It's in the commercial zone. So when we were talking in our pre-app meeting, Brian's the one that brought up, he said, we want to try to preserve any industrial that we can get. And so that made us feel encouraged, and specifically when this is a business that's been successful and has been here in Meridian for quite some time. To help you just understand, the trucks are to come and unload in that location at the west side of this new warehouse. And those are the only people that will be using that driveway or entrance onto Locust Grove. The customers are all coming and they are receiving all of their products up on Atkinson. So they'll cross their site and take things from this warehouse and the other two warehouses and fill the customers' orders. They have a whole series of hardwoods and different kinds of things. Kind of a fun place to go look at what's available. So stand for any questions that you might have.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Archer, go ahead.
do you represent the Belleville subdivision or do you represent the Intermountain Wood Products?
So I did the Belleville subdivision for Brent Belleville, and back in 2018, we recorded that, split that property. So I understand the site very well. Because I live a mile away and because I did the Belleville site, I was willing to take this on and have enjoyed working with the Banks Group and find that to be a great company and a great people to work with. So that's. I didn't go with Brent's arm to do the comp plan amendment. He told me, he says, if you say I'm supposed to do it, then I'll do it. If it doesn't hurt what I'm doing, and it doesn't. He has CC zoning, which is allowed, obviously in the plan.
Chair,
Castanelli, go ahead.
if the access to Locust Grove were to go away, would that kind of wait for that to come back? Would all the truck access have to come in through Atkins?
Yes, it would.
And what's the objection on that?
They can coordinate having the trucks. It's in a great location in the fact of, where are your exits off of the freeway? And they can stack trucks up off-site and then have them come in, unload. They have to do that because they only have so much unloading that they can do. It would maybe make it a little more congested between their two warehouses to drive to the back. But overall, that access, I mean, I'd have to have an emergency access over there someplace anyway, to make the fire department happy, because we're going to be beyond any distance and they would want to be around that building. I think by us limiting that it's not a customer access, I think that really reduces, and that's why the highway district didn't.
Now, could you stop? If I'm a customer, I might come in that way as opposed to one water tower coming in off of Franklin to go up Adkins or something like that. I mean, how are they going to discourage customers from coming in that way and driving around to the front?
I guess I did a cabinet shop off of Franklin Road, and they had an access in the back where they brought deliveries. That's not where the customers go. I mean, is there occasionally going to be one? Maybe someone would. I know all the ways in and out of there because I live close to there. Locust Grove is busy, but it is, not. It's a 9 to 5 type of scenario when people are going to be there dropping off and when customers are there. It's the access that they know. That's where they go to do business with this company. Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Grove, go ahead.
With the Locust Grove access, would you be willing to sign it as right in, right out, and also make it no truck access?
Well, the truck access is what we're looking to have.
I understand.
That's- Yeah, we.
But in lieu of closing the access altogether. So staff report is, the staff recommendation is to close that Locust Grove access. So in lieu of losing the access altogether.
There's no reason to have the access if you don't have truck access.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
Water Tower Street is a secret special way that residents get through from Locust Grove to Meridian Road. So there's a fair amount of resident traffic coming through. I would support the big trucks coming off of Locust Grove, especially if they are truly 18-wheelers, to be able to navigate going around Water Tower and then to Atkins, doing those turns with their the way they're connected with the tractor and trailer would be challenging for some of those drivers. It would be safer to have them come off Locust Grove than they would the smaller streets, just because of their turn radius of the 18-wheelers. And maybe accommodating, right in, right out, so that they're only making right-hand turns and not trying to take left. That could be something that could be discussed, but I disagree with removing access to Locust Grove with big trucks. They need the room to be able to maneuver.
Well, I was going to say, I'm going to chime in on this one a little bit here, but I mean, right now they come through an industrial park and the roads are supposed to be accommodating for that. Everything that they have is being delivered off of those roads right now. So this is supposed to provide more access. So I guess I don't see that big of an issue with it. Especially with them removing all the trees and everything in between, they could make that more accommodating altogether, for sure. The Locust Grove piece of it it's interesting. I understand why you want that, but at the same time, you're expanding a business that hasn't currently done any business off of it. So that's interesting.
The developers here, if you want to ask him some questions too.
Absolutely. If you'd like to take a
Brad
stab.
Banks, 1940 Southwest Temple, Salt Lake City. The purpose of this larger building is, we would refer to it as central purchasing. I send my truck to the Northwest and it'll bring in a load of plywood and I'll unload it in this warehouse. Another truck will bring in a load of pine from the Pacific Northwest. Another truck will bring in a load of oak from the east. And then those trucks will take out partial orders and leave and go to another distribution center in Salt Lake or Spokane or Idaho Falls. Small portions of that material will go over to this Boyce or Meridian distribution center to address the needs of the Meridian customers. So this building will not be used for customer activity other than internal customers. It'll be a central purchasing warehouse. What does Amazon call their collection? Anyway, it's a distribution hub. It's a distribution hub for my 10 other distribution centers, Meridian being one of them. So those trucks would come in with a full load of product A and leave with a full load of product A, B, and C going to other locations. And then at the same time serving this Meridian location, which then local cabinet shops and flooring contractors would come into the Meridian location to get their material. There'd be nothing in this larger distribution hub that would service any customer other than our internal customers in the different locations. So that's what the value of the Locust Grove access is, to bring that in through Atkin Way and trying to bring it down through here would just congest the Meridian customer base and the Meridian activity at the expense of the local population.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So this is really more independent, if you will, of the existing business.
Correct.
Okay. So customers, I mean, it's virtually standalone except for a little product that will make its way over.
To the
Across the
to the
park.
Meridian Distribution Center.
Okay.
In this Meridian Distribution Center, the building on the north is hardwood flooring that would serve all of the hardwood flooring contractors in this geographical area. The building to the south is industrial wood products, which services all the cabinet shops in this area. And then both those products would be fed from the bigger distribution center here on the east that would feed them. No customer would be coming to or getting any product out of the larger distribution building.
What time would you be accepting shipments into that new building?
Please repeat the question.
What are the times you'd be accepting shipments into that building? What time would the trucks be in and out of there?
It's 8 to 5 business.
Anything, they wouldn't open up something to allow shipping at night or anything along those lines?
No, we're not very good looking, so we need lots of beauty sleep.
You and I both.
Is the intent is only to have one loading dock?
That one loading dock you see is for van trucks that need to be loaded out of the tailgate. So a forklift would go into and bring material out of. To the side of it, we would unload flatbed trucks that would come into the building that are not required to load from the tailgate.
Okay. So you'd have forklift activity out there.
Correct.
Okay, any more questions for the applicant or staff? All right.
Thank
very
you.
much. Okay, at this time, we'll take public testimony.
I wanted to make one other comment. ACHD was very specific in how they, looked at this, and they had similar concerns. I would say that they looked at it. We have 3 drive approaches and 2 drive approaches and a cross access that are out there that they put in when they widen the road. They widened the road when J-Build went in, which is where the school facility and ICOM are at now. And they punched the overpass over. And so they completed the improvements along Locust Grove at that time. And so they provided drive approaches for each one of these properties. And this northern portion of this site had that shared driveway with Ann Weatherall, that's the property owner to the north of us. She's our only person that showed up to our neighborhood meeting, and every single one of these properties in the last 3 years have had for sale signs on them. They have been approached by multifamily developers to buy all of them, which is not what staff would want to see in a mixed use. I've heard those words come out of your mouths, that's not what you're looking for. We don't expect that. I think I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission in Meridian when the R40 went in and they had apartments, and I think the developer knew that ACHD was going to need a storm drain pond, and by getting it approved, he got a little higher value. But there's been a number of people that have looked at that, and it's tough to make it work. And so access is a big issue. We're not opposed to providing it across north, south, and working with our neighbors. Thanks.
All right, now we will take public testimony. Do we have anybody signed up?
Mr. Chair, we have no one signed in. So
Okay, looks like we have one person like to come on up. Yep, if you can state your name and address for the record and just grab one of those microphones, speak right into it, please.
Okay, I am the infamous Ann Witherill. I live at 215 South Locust Grove Road. I'm the neighbor to the north. I was going to just sit and say nothing, but you got my attention now with the access to the north, that cuts right across my driveway. That's the only way I have in and out. So that does have me concerned. And the only other thing that I would care to address would be the home with lots of shades on his lights, because that's shining right into our bedroom windows. But so far, they have been excellent neighbors, and they have worked with us on just about any little thing that's come up, including the peach tree they left me. It's delicious, and it's in my freezer. Lots of little things. The rhubarb. That's the other freezer. So they're that kind of neighbor, and I think that that they will be quite willing to work with me on any little thing that comes up. That's about all I had to say. Is what is this about a northern access that the fire trucks are going to come? And I live there with in my home with my daughter, son-in-law, and 2 special need kids because of the rent situation. Can't move until they do. I do intend to. That's not for the foreseeable future, as you can tell by the housing situation, and they can't afford it. I will be there for as long as I'm there. That's what I say. And if you're worried about the truck turnarounds, please take a look and see what is there now. I assure you, there's plenty of room, and I've seen it. So anyway, that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Alan, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, and I'm sure you already know this, but out of respect for the neighbor, we're not proposing that they put access into their property. We're just proposing that they provide an easement. So if that lot in 10 years redevelops, then they'll have access. So we would not force access onto your lot. We would just give them the legal right for someone eventually when that redevelops. And in regard to the lights, they would have to downcast them and shield, and they can't have lights spill on the adjacent property. So we would be very, very cognizant of that.
Thank you. Okay, sir, go ahead. Come on up and give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Gil Rand. I'm the architect on the project. My address is 962 West, 800 North, Orem, Utah. There's been a lot of discussion about the right in and right out. And originally we had it designed that way. If you look at the drawing up there, we had it designed so that a truck coming southbound could come right in and then go around the building and the dock. But unfortunately, that's facing the wrong way. But then the trucks would continue on out and have a right out. So not being able to have the dock facing the neighbor means now I have to change the directions of the traffic, and it makes the getting into and out of the property very difficult, because you have to make a U-turn coming in if you're coming south, and then if you're going out, you have to make a U-turn onto Locust Road. So we can put a whole bunch of trees and a fence on that north property line, which blocks the view of a dock that might be exposed. If we could just change the dock location, then we can resolve and at least take care of an issue of a right in and right out of the truck and make it actually flow very well that way. Originally we had. That was kind of my own. Another comment I do want you to be aware of is that this lot has quite a slope to it going out to Locust, going down. And so our intent here is that we would drop the property probably about 4 feet below the adjacent property to the west. So we will have a ramp that comes down to it. So the ramp can be used to get back and forth between the properties, but having a lot of truck traffic going through that could be a little more difficult to deal with. But if that's what we have to do, figure out a way to make it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else signed up or would like to testify? All right. So with that, Would the applicant like to come back up to close? Nothing further? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the applicant.
Okay, Commissioner Grove, go ahead.
Sorry, Ken. Having been over there quite a bit, the north and south of the building are highly visible driving on Locust Grove. I see where you have the east facing front of the building having modulation. Do you have modulation on the north and south sides as well?
That's what they're gonna work with staff to do.
Okay.
And if I understand, we have to do a zoning certificate, and we also have to do design review. So there's, if you understand the process, Alan kind of beat us up that the first time he saw a drawing, well, years ago when you would have a pre-app, you kind of come in with a napkin sketch, and now Alan's getting more and more fussy product. He might tell us to throw it all away. He came in with something better than a sketch like that, but yes, we're trying to do everything and just understanding the rules and making those changes. Our architect and owner are willing to do that to make.
Right, any other questions? All right, thank you, sir, appreciate it.
Thanks.
Can we get a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casanelli.
I move we close public hearing of file number H-2021-0042.
Been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for file number H 2021-0042. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casanelli, go ahead.
I've got a question for staff on those two commercial, is it one or two to the south that we're looking at, two parcels?
Two.
How are those accessed? Well, right now? Well, I guess right now,
Hey,
is the
look.
driveway coming off of Locust Grove?
I do not believe, let me look at that. I can give you an accurate
Are we
answer.
gonna landlock those two?
Give me a second. Let me find it.
I was gonna say, when I looked at it earlier, that comes off of Locust Grove, so I think they do have cross access to get to the other commercial though.
Give me a minute, I'm pulling up the GIS. Still working on it here.
What I'm seeing right now is they pull access off Locust Grove. That's gonna have to go away.
I think you removed the zip drive. That's why I couldn't find it. All right, let's run through this. Let's see, here is the plat. Looks like there is an access easement to the north. Looks like there is an access easement to South Locust Grove here.
Will ACHD continue to allow that access onto Locust Grove?
ACHD isn't going to tell them they have to close this or assess that access until the time comes that they're proposing to develop something. This is off-site, so they're not going to tell somebody else next door to close their access.
No, I know, but I just want to, I mean, I want to make sure that when we get there, that we're not trying to shove a round peg into a square hole 3 years from now.
Yeah, so ACHD's position on this, because I actually asked them specifically about the truck traffic and they said it meets all requirements. That was their statement.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I think that the cross access agreement that they have here with the property to the south, they also have the ability to come out on the arterial to the south, as well as the shared access that they're going to be provided with Intermountain Woodwork here.
So is there going to be, does that then have cross access to that parcel, that commercial that we're looking at? Will that will have, that already has cross access into the subject property?
Yes, sir.
The north, okay.
Correct.
And will they have it to the south?
This property?
1 and 2 there.
I do not know if this adjacent lot here has an access easement.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that I have a feeling that, 3 years from now, when that gets developed, ACHD is going to try and close off that access.
I do not have the Murdoch subdivision #2 plot with me. I don't know if Kent can answer that. Sounds like Kent can answer that.
Come on up to the microphone then. Let's put this all on record here.
Yep, around 3161 East Springwood. So when the Belleville subdivision was done, the condition was the same as what you're trying to place on us, is that you had an access to the south and an access to the north. So there is already an existing access to the Murdoch stuff that's to the south from the Belleville. The Highway District looked at this project with being fully built out with the flex buildings. And so they granted that access that was already existing. It was one of the first pieces of property. It was the annexation path for the Snorting Bull subdivision or Woodbridge, whichever you want to call it. And so it was probably the oldest thing annexed there, but that access has always been there on the Belleville property.
Okay.
And so it's not to go away. It wouldn't be affected by our development.
And part of the application we're seeing though is to change that. And I want to make sure that we don't,
The only thing that we're changing is the comprehensive plan that called it out for mixed use community. That's the only part that the reason that Belleville's even involved was so that there was consistency. They asked us to do it to clean up the map and not leave something that's mixed use community with an industrial in the middle of it. And it made sense because everything to the south of that was commercial comprehensive plan, so that cleans up the map. That's why that was done.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, anybody else have questions, comments?
I've got another question for staff. The current mixed use communities, the maximum building size there is 30,000 square feet, looks like. Is that correct? So is that the main reason to go to the industrial, because we're the building size?
Well, mixed use community doesn't allow industrial. We wouldn't be able to rezone it to industrial if the comp plan designation wasn't changed.
Yeah, so that's not even allowable use.
No,
Okay.
no, it's not an allowable use.
Okay. Just wanted to get that straight. As long as my microphone's on here, I'm talking. I think it fits there. I would prefer to see the access to Locust Grove go away in agreement with staff. But given the fact that this is, it's really a standalone business, I mean, it could essentially go in under a whole different business name. It's so separate from kind of the retail side or the contractor side that I think it's necessary. And it's going to be employees and in and out, and at 8 in the morning and leaving at 5, and I don't know, 4 or 5 trucks a day. I mean, I don't know what the number would be. So I don't think it's going to be a huge impairment to traffic, Locust Grove. I think it's going to be a minimal impact. So I would be in favor of keeping that. I do, staff's going to work with them on the building design. I would definitely want to see the cross-access easement to the north, and definitely lots of trees going in there. They're a wood company. They want trees anyway.
Sure. Mr. Grove, go ahead.
Initially, I was against the Locust Grove access. The explanations given tonight, I don't have that reservation. I think that it kind of, as Commissioner Casanelli mentioned, it's a great way of looking at this. One question I might have for staff would be, if we're looking at it kind of through that lens a little bit, is there any reason that we would want to have a cross-access agreement with the 2 properties that Intermountain has, in terms of going east to west, in case those were at any point, 20 years from now, separated into 2 separate businesses?
Are you referring to right where I've go? I don't think I'm sharing. Hang on a second. Are you referring to right here?
Correct.
Well, this hasn't been platted, so I don't believe that there's an access agreement here, but absolutely yes.
Okay. Just in case, they did separate it, they are connected now, but I mean, it does look like it could, at some point. So just building that in,
100%.
It doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't look like. So I'd be happier with that. I'm in favor of adding industrial. This is a great place to do it. I think they're going to find, even if we don't put in the right in, right out, that's going to be pretty much what has to happen most of the time driving on that stretch of road. Just from a logistics standpoint, even if we don't enforce it that way, I mean, that's trying to get in and out of that area sometimes is hard enough, going right in or right out. So I would prefer it to be marked that way, but it's not a deal breaker for me if we don't have that there.
That would be something we would require anyway with the certificate of zoning compliance, but duly noted. I'll make sure that is done. I don't think they're going to have an issue with providing an access to themselves.
Question for staff on the dock placement. How far out of compliance was it when the dock was on the other side?
It was, I think it was about 100 feet. It says it has to be at least 300 feet from an adjacent residential property. The original version was up in here. I measured it to be give or take about 100 feet. So they had to move it another 200 feet, or they had to totally enclose it. This is the option that they chose.
Is that something they can apply for alternative compliance for?
I do not believe so, because that is a site and design standard. That's code, and I don't think that can be waived. I'm looking at Bill because he's the code meister, code Yoda.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, yeah, that's a specific use standard for warehousing, so there is no mechanism to waive that requirement for code. I was looking at Alan's staff report, and I got a little bit of a concern when the gentleman said they're going to offload trailers with forklifts, because the code says outdoor activity needs to be 300 feet. So They can't just load trucks on that driveway and unload there. They're going to have to maintain unloading as close as possible to that loading dock as possible and not park along that north boundary and offload trucks there. They're not going to meet the requirements of code. So when we work with them on their certificate of zoning compliance, we're going to be very specific on that, and they need to provide us details on how they plan on using their outdoor activity area, because now they're opening it up even with the other site farther to the on the east boundary with sharing the two properties. So it does get a little tricky here for us, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any more comments, suggestions, anything along those lines? A motion? Always entertained.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Grove?
take a shot at it. All right. After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to the city council of file number H 2021-0042 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of October 7th, 2021, with the following modifications. Sorry if I get this wrong, but I'm gonna try. That cross access easements be required for the north, west, and south portions of the site, that the access to Locust Grove is maintained, and that the renderings or the layout that was presented by the applicant in tonight's presentation is recorded as the drawings for which to proceed.
There a second?
If I could make one little add to
The drawings that we saw tonight, since they were different from what was in our packets.
we just add in there, I think they're going to work on it. I think Alan said he would, but the lighting that they work
In
on,
which sense?
to direct the lighting away from the residential.
I think that's already part of code.
It's code.
So we don't have to do anything.
And I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve item number H 2021-0042 Intermountain Wood Products. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, we will go ahead and take a 5-minute break. Okay, I think we're all back, so. Let me see. We're moving on to Southridge Apartments Phase 3, H 2021-0055, and we will begin with staff report.
Get through Alan's 50 slides here this evening.
Very informative.
And we'll get on to the next item here. So I'm here filling in for Sonia this evening. So the next application on your agenda this evening is the Southridge Apartments Phase 3. The subject property is currently zoned R15 in the city. It's located on the south side of Overland Road, midway between 10 Mile and Linder Road, as you can see here. Currently, there's 2 phases that have already been approved for the northern lots that are also part of the R15. And this particular property is governed by a development agreement, and this is a 3rd phase, which is also covered under that same development agreement. So essentially, the applicants here tonight basically going through the process to say, hey, we've already got this in the development agreement with a concept plan. Now we're bringing forward a detailed plan for this body to review and approve. Staff has analyzed this proposal against the specific use standards, UDC 4-3-27, which is our multifamily standards. The conditional use before you this evening consists of 164 residential units on approximately 9.07 acres of land, again in the R15 zone here. This has always been considered part of the Southridge development, and you can see here that there's some additional single-family lots that will be developing in the area and additional road work as well, which final plats have been approved to allow the connections of these roads to occur. So that should provide additional access to this proposed development. As you can see here on the proposed plan as well, there is 2 accesses to the adjacent roadway on the east. And again, that was consistent with the concept plan approved in that development agreement. And this specific road is a local street, so no access issues with this particular application this evening. It is consistent with code and the development agreement. Here's the open space that was provided. You can see here the applicant is required to provide approximately 2 acres of open space per the UDC. They have an excess of 22.9% open space, so meeting in excess of UDC standards. The applicant is also proposing another clubhouse with a fitness facility as part of this 3rd phase. And this particular development will share all the open space and the additional amenities that were approved with phase 1 and phase 2. So overall, this site is consistent with the high density residential designation for this property. The applicant's application this evening is proposing approximately 18 dwelling units to the acre. Here's some of the conceptual elevations, or at least the elevations that were presented or provided with the conditional use application. Again, these mirror what is currently being under construction out there on the site and consistent to what is in the development agreement. Staff had a chance to look at the public record and did not see that any public comments were provided on this application. So with that, staff is recommending approval with the conditions in the staff report, and I'll stand for any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. At this point, we'd like to invite the applicant to come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, my name is Jason Densmer. I'm with the Land Group. We're at 462 East Shore Drive in Eagle. How's the microphone? Is it working? Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. We've been working with the city on the Southridge Apartments project since 2011, when it was originally rezoned. Since then, it's been in front of this board and at city council a few times before, as we've worked to develop the prior 2 phases, and then in the last 2 years or so, modify the development agreement to incorporate this phase 3 area, which in the original development agreement did not have a detailed land plan and therefore needed to come back through to modify the development agreement and incorporate one. The conditional use permit application in front of you tonight is entirely consistent with the master site plan that was included in that development agreement modification. So we think that we're really here tonight to fulfill the overall process and the development vision that the city has been working with for about 10 years now. We are in agreement with the staff's report and their conditions of approval and don't have any concerns. But we're happy to answer questions if you have them for us.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Grove, go ahead.
I was curious to see an overview of all three phases because the open space and the amenities are being, alluded to in, in partnership with what's already been approved. But I want to, I'm having some difficulties with what is provided for the open space. And so if there's greater open space that is part of the other phases, I'd like to be able to see that, I guess.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Grove, I thought that might come up. I have a brief presentation which happens to have the master plan on it. Let me see if I can get Bill to help.
Perfect. Thank you. Quick question that was, I'm glad you brought that up, Commissioner Grove, because I'd like to see how it all ties together, because a lot of the open space is what comes down from the Reidenbach Canal where that's very sloped. And how does that incorporate into this? I mean, is that actual usable space or is it just kind of there?
Mr. Chair, it's depends on what you think of as usable space. It wouldn't be suitable for a game of soccer, but it's open space in terms of it's undeveloped and it provides, I guess, less density within the community and just a sense of greenness and openness.
So it's undeveloped, there's no grass or trails or anything along those lines on it?
As part of the overall Southridge master plan, there is a city pathway that would be on one side of the Reidenbach Canal. It happens to be on the south side. The north side of the canal is Nampa Meridian Irrigation District access road.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Grove, the portion of the overall development that is the phase 3 is the southeast corner. That's what tonight's conditional use permit application is about. The prior two phases are the north section that is abutting Overland Road.
Okay, thank you. That actually cleared up quite a bit for me by the phase 3 that we're seeing tonight. The northwest corner of that where it abuts to phase 2 was abbreviated, and so it made that open space look a lot smaller than what is shown here. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
I'm glad that helped. I think you can see that the overall design of phase 3 is consistent with 1 and 2 and the orientation of the building and the way that things knit together, kind of almost like zipper, I suppose, is part of the overall feel of the building. I would point out that the buildings are intentionally angled to one another so that you get more presence, more visibility, and more interest as you're driving down the streets and through the
Okay. Any other questions for applicant or staff? Mr. Chair. Commissioner Casanelli, go ahead.
I see that there's more parking than is required by almost 50 spaces, I think 49 spaces. It's too late to do math. Is parking in the existing phases an issue at all?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Casanelli, to my understanding, the existing development is being very well to the extent that they're constructing about one building per month, and within the few days after occupancy is granted, about half the building is occupied, and before the end of that month, the rest of it is. So there's definitely a lot of uptake. I say that in order to say that no, parking has not been an issue within the portion of the development that's currently complete. Kind of as a rule across the board, this project has provided 2 units or 2 parking spaces per unit, regardless of what the code would have required. So in the case of this Southridge phase 3 portion, we are in excess of the city's minimum parking requirements. In fact, we're in excess of the 2 per unit kind of developer chosen standard by about 10 spaces. So we are exceeding both the city's minimum and his target for parking.
Okay, 'cause that is, I mean, good size development, so it's, a lot of parking is needed.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir. That will open it up to public testimony. Do we have anybody signed in?
Mr. Chair, we do not.
Okay, anybody online, please press the raise your hand button. Anybody here, raise your hand. Zero attendees on there, so nobody raising their hand, nobody in here. So if the applicant have anything else to add, would like to close with anything or anything along those lines, or, okay, the head shake is perfectly fine. So, okay, if there's no other questions, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for H 2021-0055. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
since this is more of a formality for phase 3 of 2 phases that have probably been looked at pretty strongly, I would move to do a motion for approval.
Feel free.
Anybody? After consideration of all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H 2021-005 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of October 7th, 2021.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve item H 2021-0055 with no modifications. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Okay, looks like we're going to go on to 10 Mile Creek Storage, H 2021-0054, and we'll begin the staff report. Bill might not have told you, we keep all the USB drives that come in, we don't let. There you go.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Appreciate your patience this evening. So last item on the agenda tonight is the TM Creek Storage Project. It is, again, another conditional use permit. This is similar to the last application that you just acted on, where the applicant received approval through a DA to allow for this use to occur on the subject property. This property consists of 7.8 acres of land currently zoned CG within the city limits. It's located on the west side of Franklin Road and bounded on the west and east, west side by 10 Mile Road and then east side Linder Road. So in between both of those roadways. Again, DA governs this specific property, and the applicant is here to just kind of give you more specifics of that particular approval. So recently, the applicant did receive approval of a final plat as well. So as you can see in the slide that I just transitioned from, this isn't really the current configuration, or that's the current configuration of the property. But after the plat records, there'll be several commercial lots. And one of those commercial lots, after recordation of the plat, will be the home of this new storage facility here that's being shared with you this evening. One thing that I did want to mention to the commission is this existing street here, which is Benchmark, is not constructed at this time, but again, it was approved as part of that final plat. So that access will be constructed and provided for access to the storage facility in conjunction with the access to Franklin Road as well. So then this is not specifically a public right-of-way or road, but if you recall with the 10 Mile Crossing preliminary plat, the city council did approve this access to Franklin Road, and now the applicant will continue to work with ACHD with a traffic study to get their approval of that subject access point. So the application is, again, a conditional use, consists of 448 conditioned and unconditioned climate-controlled structures, and then there's some ancillary covered and uncovered RV storage. As I mentioned to you, this concept is generally consistent with the development agreement that's currently governing the site. Access has already been touched on, and the applicant did provide conceptual elevations for you this evening. Again, as part of that DA modification, the applicant did receive approval of their own design standards, their own design guidelines that are enforced for this subject property. So essentially what will happen is the applicant will still have to come back before the city with a certificate of zoning compliance. But as part of that submittal process, they have to provide documentation from the design review board that they've approved these elevations and meet their design standards that are governed and specified in that development agreement. I had a chance to look at the public record, did not see where any public comment was provided on this application. Again, staff is recommending approval with conditions, and with that, I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you. At this point, would the applicant like to come forward?
Evening, Chair, Commissioners. My name is Josh Beach with Brighton Development. Address is 2929 West Navigator here in Meridian. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate that. So, little presentation for you. Appreciate Bill's synopsis there of the project. So, as Bill said, we've applied for a conditional use permit for 10 Mile Creek storage. They're south of Franklin. This is kind of how it fits in the overall 10 Mile crossing area. So, as Bill mentioned, Benchmark is not constructed yet, but will be prior to obviously occupancy, kind of coordinating all of that. But clearly, we've got some work to do to get to the site before we can start building that. But this is the first step, is getting the conditional use permit. So there's a mix of different types of storage there. Not to go into this in too much detail, but there's some indoor climate controlled, some covered and uncovered RV spaces, as well as what we're calling our man cave units. I don't know if my mouse works there, but you can kind of see on the northeast side of the project where those would be. So again, indicating the indoor storage units here. The red are the open face, so they're not enclosed completely. They've got a roof and at least one side open, and then in the center here in yellow is our uncovered RV parking. And then we're calling the man caves, but it's essentially individuals that have a classic car or something that they want to store and go tinker with. This is more geared towards that demographic. And like I said, there's 22 of those units there that would be accessed off of that private street, as well as an emergency access there on the east side. That emergency access also serves the larger storage project as well, and we'll get folks out to Franklin. So we've provided some elevations and with our application, those are kind of a work in progress. We're tinkering with those a little bit, but they'll meet our design standards when we submit for the certificate of zoning compliance, assuming that we receive a favorable recommendation from the commission. And then again, just some additional elevations of those man cave structures, as well as I wanted to show you, the commission, kind of what those look like in terms of the floor plan, as well as just a cross section here. It's essentially just an open building with a bathroom, and as an option, some will be a loft put in there. These are not to have businesses run out of them. No one's to live in these. This is simply a place to go. It's a man cave that's not in your backyard, essentially. That's all I had. Thank you for your time tonight. Hopefully we don't have any issues with the staff report, and we'd have a favorable recommendation this evening. Any questions?
Do we have any questions for the applicant or staff? Commissioner Larcher, go ahead.
The man cave units, are they going to be leased or owned?
They will be owned.
But the rest of the storage would be leased, correct?
How, will there be somebody on site or something? I mean, how do you make sure nobody's living in there or?
Yeah, there's definitely a manager, and we've also got in our CCNRs for that, or OCCs, you know, they're a little different for commercial, that obviously those things aren't allowed. No businesses can be run, no people living there, and those things will be strictly enforced.
Castanelli, I think you wanted to.
Yeah, I had a question. I like the fact that these are, without a lot of comments right now, but I like the fact that it's fully back behind off of Franklin. With that note, what's the plan for those parcels out front?
I'm not 100% sure. Obviously, they're going to be commercial. I don't have the exact details as to what those commercial lots are going to look like along Franklin.
But that'll be all, I mean, essentially all that storage will be hidden from view.
Correct.
off of-
Yep. They'll be back behind other structures.
Okay.
Commissioner Grove?
I echo that. That was one of the things that I was cognizant of as I was reading. Really happy that it's off of the arterial. So my question though, now that I've lost my train of thought, you know what? Come back to me for just a second. I wrote it down somewhere else. Let me look.
That's okay. I've got,
Share.
yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Castanel.
I was just gonna give Commissioner Grove a little time. I wanted
Mm.
to ask Bill, what kind of zoning guidelines, regulations are there as far as businesses being run out of there? And obviously somebody, I mean, that's kind of a little bit of a, if they're used the way they're intended to be used, it's great. But if they're used for other purposes, how do we, how's that enforceable and that sort of thing? What are the codes for that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I think Josh had it spot on. The code prohibits it for storage facilities. It's really what it's meant to be, is storage. It speaks to no living quarters unless you have a caretaker's unit. It doesn't allow you to operate a business out of there. If someone wanted to do that, more than likely they'd have to come back through to the city with a tenant improvement and then build out that space. And that's going to kick in a bunch of building code requirements. We have similar units off of Pine, right by Lewis and Clark High School, that they were built in 2007, 2008, and they were called storage condos, which are the same thing. It had mezzanine built inside of it. People were just storing their classic cars and their RVs and tinkering around, using it essentially as what the applicants explained, a man cave, just going there and just having some private space. So in this particular case, the applicant's going to have to also come back, if he wants to sell those units, come back and short plat the buildings, condominiumize them essentially, which will take city council action as well. So there's some more work to be done here, but right now, yes, the code addresses that and prohibits that from occurring.
So it's allowable for some of these to be she sheds as well, I think.
Absolutely. Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Grove, go ahead.
I remembered my question. Sorry about that. Because there are so many apartments and also single family homes that will be coming into that area, will these storage units be marketed to them first, or is it going to be first come, first serve? I know I know we all kind of hate seeing lots of storage sheds all over town, but I know that they're also really hard to get because people have a lot of stuff. And so what are you kind of planning with these ones?
Yeah, to my knowledge, it's a first come, first serve in terms of availability. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Sam, thank you. And we'll, I'll just open it to, excuse me, open it to public testimony, and we don't have anybody signed in. Only one other person with us not raising their hand. We're good? We're clear?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in for
Okay.
this.
All right. With that, unless the applicant has something else, I'll take a motion to close public testimony.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close public testimony for TM Creek Storage H 2021-0054. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Anybody else have anything to
Mr. Chairman,
add? Commissioner Lorcher?
developers will stop making storage when there's no demand. So as long as there's demand, they'll continue to build storage. Adding this concept of the man cave or the fancy garage offsite is gaining a lot of traction across the country. So it's a very marketable product right now. So I can see their benefit. I guess my only hesitation, and this is an issue of people who rent from there. If I owned a unit with my fancy car and everything around me was rentable, and I have, whatever junk in there and people kind of come and go. If I had a Lamborghini, I might be a little concerned about a storage shed with just stuff in it. You know what I mean? As opposed to this being just a freestanding, garage type thing. But that's up to the developer and the owners and how they'll sell it.
So this is my first time looking at a product like this. I'm glad to see that there's a precedence in Meridian already for something like this, and they've had success with it. So I think the way that it was platted in here, the the man cave section of this is it's its own entrance exit, and you can't get there necessarily from the regular storage units. Because I would have the same. Yeah, I mean, the idea is you're going to put something in there that probably is costly for sure. So you'd want to have that, and it is, separated off from everything else. So when I get my Lamborghini, I'll go looking.
Keep in mind in my garage. Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casanelli,
are we ready for a motion? Okay.
always.
All right, after considering all staff applicant public testimony, move to approve file number H 2021-0054 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of October 7th, 2021, with no modifications.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item H 2021-0054, 10 Mile Creek Storage with no modifications. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. We'll take one more motion, please.
Chair, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Then motioned and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, everyone.